Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пихцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Ваши жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 587 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And of course, we have big news today as I stumble right through that. But it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. After our Monday break, we are finally back and ready to get down to the next 6 days of the streaming week. Of course,
Man, we're getting down.
Man, we getting down and doity up in here. But I gotta, of course, thank every single one of y'all once again for getting the fundraiser for Razom for Ukraine this Sunday up to $8.8 thousand. That was an exceptional fundraiser, of course, helping to save many lives through Razom for Ukraine, who's been operating for an incredibly long time over there. And hopefully, with our support, they'll be able to continue to save even more lives through the amazing efforts that they do. But moving on from that, a lot has happened today. Many of y'all may have even seen our short war summary, and it wasn't even really a short war summary, it was more like just breaking news about the Chinese submarine in the Yellow Sea. And while that isn't particularly about the Ukraine war, we will be covering that specific story a little bit later on tonight. But before we do, I want to move y'all into the main story tonight, probably one of the most interesting ones from the day. We got to watch a small Russian offensive comprised of only one battalion tactical group, from what we understand, get destroyed on the battlefield south of Marinka. It's the first time that we've seen the Russians try to conduct any kind of a sizable offensive since the start of the Ukrainian counteroffensives in the south, and it appears that it ended abysmally for Russian forces. Moving on into the area of Marinka, the battle here was quite small, only lasting a few hours, but was decisively in Ukraine's favor, and not only that, resulted in incredibly high Russian losses. The city of Marinka has, of course, been fought over since the beginning of the actual war in 2014. Since then, the city has become reduced to a pile of rubble. You can even see that mostly on this. Actually, this satellite footage almost looks like it was taken before the war. That's weird, because not a single building in this town has been completely leveled. I can go and find all the video and pictures of Marinka right now, which shows that it has been completely leveled. There's nothing of this town that exists anymore. But moving on from that, this city has been fought over heavily and has been an anchor point not just for the Ukrainians, but also the Russians as well, largely stopping either side from making any gains or progress in this area. And so most of the battle for Marinka has actually started to move into its northern and southern flanks in the wide open fields, with both armed forces trying to attempt outflanking maneuvers to hopefully maneuver themselves in a way that would force the other to withdraw from Marinka and start moving further to the west or the east, depending on which side the attacking forces from. Today, the Russians tried, once again, to break the stalemate at Marinka by taking one battalion tactical group, or assuming that they were attached to one of the motor rifle brigades in the area, and push it forward towards Pobieda, and then back towards Khyovivka. So they largely were moving through wide open fields, and I'll be showing you all these wide open fields in a minute because we have some pictures of the results of this failed offensive by the Russians, but they started to attempt a move through these fields and towards the rear side of Marinka. What the Russians didn't know is that a Ukrainian ambush had already been set up and was lying in wait as they began to advance forward onto Pobieda. And as they started to move into these fields past this road right here, Ukrainian fire lit up this Russian battalion tactical group from all sides, inflicting 4 main battle tank losses and 1 armored personnel carrier lost by this battalion tactical group. The losses were so significant and taken in such a small amount of time by the Russian battalion tactical group that it then retreated off the field immediately, having taken considerably high losses, and this small engagement in between the Ukrainians and the Russians today near Marinka was a decisive Ukrainian victory. But moving on into the pictures, I can actually show you all some real picture proof of these Russian losses that were seen in the fields just south of Marinka. This is one of them, and there's more of them here in the next link, but this is, from what we understand, a T-72B3. All 4 tanks that were lost today were T-72B3s. And we can see that this one here appears to have possibly been hit on its side, as we can see fire lapping out of the bottom of the track's wheel well, so that tells us that there may be a puncture in that area, but we can also see a little bit of fire shooting out of the lower glacis of the front part of the hull, so we don't really know exactly where this thing has been punctured. That also may be ruptures in the hull from the explosion of the ammunition, which sent the turret flying, which we can see over in the field right there, but nevertheless, this is one of the T-72B3s that was lost today. And moving on into other pictures from the area, we can also see more losses from this failed attack. Here is another T-72B3 that was in this field, in this general area, that got hit and stricken. And the next picture, we can also see another charred out T-72B3. This picture was incredibly grainy, but that is our 3rd T-72B3 lost today in this 1 battalion tactical group. We can also see the BMP-2, the only armored personnel carrier that was lost by the Russians during this failed offensive. And we can see that there is smoke billowing out of what appears to be the gunner's hatch, meaning that this fire will most likely reach the ammunition incredibly soon and result in a catastrophic detonation, leading to the complete loss of the vehicle. And then in the last,
I think this is what the Ukrainians call a traditional Ukrainian bonfire or something, because this right here is really like a event for them, like this one.
Man, this was really a whole-on roast right here. They call these Russians Colombian because it's a roast. If you know what I mean. Folgers Coffee is out here, man, repping the set because these things are getting roasted out here in this field right now. But look at this. What's insane, and something that I'm stumbling over my words on, is notice how every single one of these tanks has had a turret toss. Not a single one of the main battle tanks has their turret still attached and intact. Every single one of them lost their turret. And that's telling us something very important about this attack, and also something very important about the unit that was defending this area against the Russian forces. And let me really quickly get y'all the name. It is the 79th Air Assault Brigade. The 79th Air Assault Brigade is largely a light infantry force, of course having armor support, but its armor support is less than a motorized rifle unit or an armored unit would be. This is more of a light infantry unit, focusing primarily on its infantry more so than anything else, and so it's very infantry heavy. And that also lets us know why there were so many turret tosses, is that this unit was probably using exclusively anti-tank guided missiles and anti-tank guided missile systems, ATGMs, like the TOW-2, the Javelin, let me think of what else, the Stugna, the Kornets, the Konkurs. All of those systems were probably being used, or just a few of them, against these Russian forces. And the amount of armor penetration that any of those missiles has is high enough that it would probably puncture the crew compartment immediately and cause a catastrophic detonation, leading to the loss of all of these turrets. And so, another important thing to take away from this battle, considering that we know this, is that a Russian battalion tactical group, which is pretty armor heavy, having 10 main battle tanks for 800 men, they won't always do well, even against light infantry. And this has certainly been shown today. Going up against the 79th Air Assault Brigade, we would assume that by and large, the 79th Air Assault Brigade on a battalion level would probably be outclassed by a Russian battalion tactical group just on tank numbers alone. The Russians probably have more tanks in this engagement than the 79th could pull forward. But nevertheless, the 79th, with its overwhelming amount of anti-tank missile systems, was able to easily stop this Russian attack from succeeding and cause it to falter and for the Russian forces to flee from the field after these significant losses were taken. But an absolutely amazing ambush set up from the 79th. From what we understand, they had intersecting lanes of fire somewhere around Marinka and Konstantinivka, which are both under their control to a small point, and they just started to hit hit this battalion tactical group from both sides, meaning that these Russians, were truly caught in an ambush. Probably one of the worst ones that we've seen in recent weeks of the war, but with that, we're going to be moving on from this area, and that incredibly interesting news. Pretty bizarre to see an air assault brigade wipe out a battalion tactical group with a heavy amount of armor like that. It's actually somewhat rarely seen. We'll usually see that units that inflict high armor losses on the Russians are either drone units, which are of course largely specialized in the anti-armor role with their drones, or there's some kind of a unit like the 3rd Brigade, which are stormtrooper units specifically designed to get in close and just devastate Russian forces. That's what that unit is designed to do. It's a shock unit. And so seeing something like the Air Assault Brigade, which is light infantry, usually meant to hold an area for a while really quickly and maneuver a lot, and for it to be in this kind of an area of the battlefield and to do so well against this Russian offensive was really telling today, and also shows us that the Russian training that must be had by this motor rifle brigade that they probably went up against today has to be exceptionally poor. Very poor, considering the amount of losses that they took in 3 to 4 hours. They lost one main battle tank for about every single hour they were on the field, and then also an armored personnel carrier. The infantry losses still haven't been calculated as of this moment. We have no idea what the actual infantry losses in that single battle were for the Russians. But considering that it appears that they had some kind of a lack of communication amongst the unit, and their offensive plan was executed sloppily, that also gives us a really interesting look into the concept that Russian forces are truly becoming poorer trained. And we're getting a lot of reasons to know why they're being poorer trained, because many of y'all have, of course, heard about the partial mobilization that a lot of Russians have been saying is coming. A lot of the commissars have been going around the country and telling people, if we don't get this many people to volunteer from this city, the partial mobilization is going to get called up again by the Russian government. It has been on everyone's minds and on everyone's lips inside of Russia and around the world for the past few weeks. Really, the past few months, over the past 3 months or so. But something interesting came out today, which tells me that Russian losses have to be even higher, maybe even higher, than what the Ukrainians are saying on their official casualty report. They said that they actually met the quota, and they're not going to be calling up another partial mobilization. The Russians had a quota of 335,000 soldiers that they had to get joining the Russian army. Otherwise, they were going to call up another partial mobilization. And we all know that the Russian government has promised that they would never call up another one again after the first one. And we all know that's a lie. We know that they were going to call one up as soon as they needed one. And that's why we were hearing so much about another upcoming partial mobilization here in the past few months. But Russia came out today and said that they did get enough volunteers, 335,000 of them, and they're not going to mobilize. And that's very telling. And I know a lot of people's first inclination would be the Russians have to be lying about this sort of thing. There's no way in hell that they actually got enough volunteers. I actually believe they do, and let me lay out the reasons why. One, if they say this and then they start a partial mobilization, they're going to be causing the public to have a riot inside of Russia because they would have just been told, hey guys, take it easy, there's going to be no partial mobilization. And then all of a sudden they'll go, psych, here you go. And so they're not going to do that. And another thing is that they desperately needed to call up a partial mobilization. The losses were just that high that they otherwise, if they didn't call a partial mobilization, their armed forces were going to run out of manpower in a relatively small amount of time. And so I think that through fear-mongering to the public that they were going to call up another partial mobilization, they actually did manage to get enough volunteers. And that's also something that, while a lot of people think is a negative-sounding thing, that tells us a lot about how the war is really going. In between the beginning of this war and now, they have called up a partial mobilization for 330,000 men last year, and now they've got another 335,000 volunteers this year. That means that the Russian army has grown, if you want to call it grown, and I'll tell you why it isn't growing in a minute, but if you want to say it's grown by nearly 660,000 soldiers over 2 years of fighting. That is about 70% of the Russian army size before this war, just the actual official Russian army. And when you think about that, that means that there has to have been at least 660,000 Russian soldiers that have been killed or wounded at this point, or even a higher number, that shows that the Russians are doing abysmally, terribly. Because for them to need this much manpower over two separate instances, the partial mobilization and the volunteer call-up right here, it's going terribly for them. And while that sounds like it's a positive thing for the Russians that they were able to fulfill the quota, in all honesty, it's probably one of the most negative things that the Russians could hear, because that's showing how badly the losses really are for them, that they're having to call up 300,000 man groups every year at this point to just try and fill in the void that has been placed inside of the Russian military. But with that, we're going to be moving on really quickly from Russia. We'll be getting back into Moscow in a minute. But many of y'all know that the Chinese are also one of the growing adversaries and rivals of the United States and the Western world here in East Asia. The Chinese are always trying to expand, and this is something that has, of course, raised a lot of concern in quiet back doors of Western governments about what the Chinese plans are with their expansion into the Western Pacific. And not only that, or yeah, it is the Western Pacific, because, I would have called it the Eastern Pacific, but when you look at the Pacific, that is obviously the western side of it, although it's in East Asia. But we know of the Chinese Belt and Road program, and we also know of further Chinese plans to attempt to expand outwards into the Western Pacific and try and have an indomitable sphere of influence over the areas of the Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Africa as well. If they are able to do all of these things, they are going to be creating largely an unstoppable sphere of influence that will be self-contained and will have enough resources of every kind that it will be able to sustain itself and grow its own economy, which is very concerning for the Western world, because this means that the Chinese may actually start to try and usurp our power in the world and possibly start pushing their own ideas and values. And you can ask some people in Eastern China, well, more so Western China, how that's going for them, and they'll tell you that's not going well at all. But because of all of this, many Western countries have been very curious about what the Chinese Navy is doing. It's been rapidly growing over the past few years, and right now, it technically is larger than the US Navy in numbers of ships present in the Navy alone. And of course, the British, the United States, and many other countries have been sending semi-submersible drones into the area of the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, and the South China Sea to try and find as much information as possible about the Chinese Navy's real abilities and to see what they will be able to do to counter that doctrinally. And interestingly enough, the Chinese have known about this. Of course, it's not always a very stealthy operation. Every once in a while, these little drones are found. And so the Chinese have tried to stop this with a little thing called an anchor and chain trap. These things are pretty much just a giant chain that sticks through the water. It's kind of like a wire floating in the air, and if a semi-submersible hits it, it of course it gets so damaged it may as well be destroyed or completely useless, and then it can't conduct reconnaissance on any of the Chinese naval bases that are up in the area of Dalian or near Beijing or Tianjin. Anyways, why in the world am I telling you all about this? Well, because the traps work. We found out because the Chinese Navy actually tested one of these little traps today with their own submarine, and it ended up badly. Actually, really quickly, let me correct that. This actually happened on August 21st, but a classified report has now been leaked by some whistleblower in the British government, letting us know that British intelligence now has information about the submarine. There were some rumors that had an accident in the area of the Yellow Sea back in late August, and now we know the exact information about the submarine and what happened. This is a submarine in question, a Type 94 submarine. These things cost around $750 million to build. There are only 6 of these in service with the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy, and this is the submarine that we have been told was the one that ran into the anchor and chain trap in the Yellow Sea. When it ran into,
I think it's kind of smart that China tests out the trap with one of their most expensive submarines that they have. That's probably the best way to test it.
Honestly, it is pretty smart. You got to give a lot of credit to the Chinese, man. They are really smart with the whole military side of things. I mean, I think the United States needs to start seeing about having the Chinese test out more of their stuff to make sure it works, just in case. We want to make sure that we're fighting a good adversary here. But
You know, China is just they're so wealthy and stuff like that. Their economy's doing so well. They don't have to worry about saving money to build submarines. They can just send the most expensive one out and destroy it, and it's all good.
nah, man, the Chinese economy is doing so well. They're having to destroy dozens of apartment blocks in every single city right now because there's just too many apartments. It's doing that good. But most importantly, what's some interesting takeaways about the submarine? It is a ballistic missile submarine, meaning that it carries nuclear missiles for the Chinese Navy. It also has a complement of 140 crew, and it's about 660 feet long, I believe. It's a very, very long submarine as far as they go, and it's also one of China's prides of their submarine fleet for the most part. But also that hump on the back is ugly, man. You said the sub is kind of ugly. This thing is really ugly. I still think it's better looking than the North Korean sub that they just made, but it's still pretty damn ugly. Anyways,
Yeah, and are those like missile bays or something that have the doors open on top? What is that?
yeah, those are missile bays for the ballistic missiles.
Yeah, when I first glanced at it, I thought it was like, you know, like those trucks have like smokestack type deals on top of
Oh
them with
my
like the
Lord.
flap. I thought it was that. I was like, what the hell kind of design is that?
What the hell is even that? But
Man, that's that Bing Shilling sub, you know?
what's up, Beijing? But anyways, moving on past all the jokes about this ugly submarine, this submarine was the one that ran into the anchor and chain trap. It has a crew of 140, and apparently, when it hit the anchor and chain, it damaged the submarine so badly that it was not able to surface for 6 hours. And during those 6 hours, the crew was desperately trying to repair the submarine and get it to where it could surface. In the meantime, a disaster started to form. From what we can tell from the intelligence report, 55 crew members were killed on this submarine due to an oxygen system failing and leaking toxic gas. The toxic gas ended up killing 55 of the crew, like I said. Most of them were officers. Something around 35 of the crew members killed were all actual officers. I also had a misstatement earlier on in the war summary. I said that the petty officers were officers as well. Those were actually NCOs, which aren't technically officers. They're non-commissioned officers, which is a whole other thing. But anyways, a lot of them died. A lot of the officers died. And that tells us that this gas leak from the oxygen system was probably near the bridge, because we also were told that it killed the captain of the submarine as well. And I think his name was Colonel Yang Xingping, I believe. I'm not really sure. I'll have to go back and look. But the submarine captain was killed. Most of the officers were killed as well. And the submarine returned finally to port after having nearly a third of its crew die. And then it started to actually implement actual repairs onto the submarine. It is an absolute disaster, though, from multiple aspects. One, how did the Chinese submarine not know that the anchor and chain was there? Was that a failing of the navigator, or did the Chinese Navy lay out this trap and then not advise their submarines of the risks in this area after the trap was laid? There's so many things that have gone wrong in this one situation, and it's showing that the Chinese Navy isn't as coordinated and isn't as effective as we think it may be, because for an accident like this to happen is incredibly rare in the modern naval world. Of course, the United States has had its own problems with submarines. The USS Thresher is probably a very good example, but we've never had a problem like this one. The Soviet Union, the Russian Federation, and the Chinese seem to be the ones in the modern world who have the largest problems with their submarine forces, and it may be showing a lack of training or a lack of communication with their submarine arm with the rest of their navy. But with that, that's largely all of the news that we have right now on the Type 94 submarine that ended up getting into a whole, I guess you could say, got kind of tied up and a little tangled up, man, you know, in a bad situation in the LOC. But nevertheless,
Man, when you call up the Russian submarine commander and they say, "Oh, a little tied up right now," literally.
man, they sat there, man. They said, "Oh man, I guess you could say I'm anchored down right now." it's a little bit of a problem. Hey, do you smell that? No, I don't smell nothing. They're like, oh my lord. And of course,
but to be perfectly honest though, that is a terrible death. Like I can only imagine they basically suffocated to death. That's basically the way it sounds like.
yeah, they kind of did. The gas probably just ended up suffocating them, kind of like carbon monoxide, but we actually don't know what kind of gas it was. So we don't know if it was a violent kind of death from the gas or if it was just a passive death from the gas where he just fell asleep and then died. We don't really know the exact details, but it was still pretty horrific that a third of the crew of the submarine would end up getting killed in an accident. That's a pretty severe accident as far as submarines go. And so, let's see. And also, I think Rob Eisman said they all might be dead. But we'll wait and see on that one. But moving on from the Yellow Sea and on back towards Russia, and speaking of the failings of the submarine fleets of the Russian military, among many other things, we have also seen something very interesting. Satellite pictures have just been released of the port of Novorossiysk, and we're starting to notice that a lot of the Black Sea Fleet is oddly starting to show up inside of Novorossiysk. Here is the Admiral Grigorovich class, the Admiral Essen. Here's a Krivik class, the Lodny. Here's the Ursa Major. And I believe that's just a cargo ship, so that's nothing special. Here is another Admiral Grigorovich class. That's the Admiral Makarov. Look at that. Interestingly enough, 2 of the Admiral Grigorovich classes are here, and a Krivik is here. That's actually kind of a little large and noticeable. But what's even more noticeable is the other ships that are in the harbor as well. We can see some other Russian Black Sea Fleet ships that are now inside of some moorings at Novorossiysk there. We didn't get any classifications on what kind of ships those were. We can see that almost all of the remaining Kilo-class submarines are no longer at Sevastopol anymore. They have all been moved to Novorossiysk. All 3 of them were spotted here on satellite footage and let me make sure we're getting this correct, just 2 days ago. So pretty much the whole submarine fleet of the Black Sea Fleet has moved over and into Novorossiysk. They're no longer stationed at Sevastopol anymore. And we also saw that 2 of the Sorum-class Project 745s, which I believe are some kind of research vessels, are actually stationed here at Novorossiysk as well, and a Natia class as well. I don't really know a lot about the Natia class. But nevertheless, a lot of the Russian Black Sea Fleet is starting to move towards Novorossiysk and into the Sea of Azov. And this is showing us something big. While the Ukrainians didn't completely destroy the Black Sea Fleet, they did heavily damage their abilities, though, and destroy a decent amount of ships. It appears that the Russians have gotten so scared of taking devastating losses. They've already taken devastating losses, but absolutely catastrophic losses, that the Black Sea Fleet has practically moved out of range to be able to effectively enforce the blockade on Crimean ports, or Ukrainian ports for that matter, and they're now all the way back inside of the Russian mainland or sailing around the Sea of Azov and hoping not to get hit. And that's pretty big news. That's very big news as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, because this may mean that the port of Odessa is entirely open now to commercial shipping again, as the Russian Black Sea Fleet is in no position at the moment to currently try and interdict or stop commercial shipping on a regular basis. And speaking of which, this is incurring some very heavy costs from the Russians to even try and do this. Novorossiysk doesn't have the extensive port facilities that Sevastopol port had, that made it a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient to run the Russian Black Sea Fleet with. And these costs, along with the costs of fighting the war in Ukraine, are really starting to dig into the Russians' pockets heavily. And because of that, we've now heard a statement from the Russian government that is incredibly shocking, just on the monetary level. They're going to be upping their military budget next year. Their military spending this year was assumed to be around $55 billion to $60 billion, and that's what it will be by the time this year rounds out. Today, a statement has come out, this was actually retweeted by Max Sedin, that stated that the Russian plans to spend $110 billion next year on defense.
Russia? Wait a minute, USD?
No, yeah, 110 billion US dollars.
Dang, man. Like, they can't afford that. Like, where are they getting the money from?
That's a good question. That right there, spending $110 billion on the Russian military next year would be 10% of the Russians' GDP. Because
that's even more than they predicted, like, they were going to spend. Like, I remember they said they were going to up it to, like, 6 or 7 or 8%, but not 10, though. That's much more than they thought.
And you wouldn't believe it, though. That telegram attachment right there is actually to the official telegram of the Russian Federation, of one of the Russian Federation offices. So this is an actual statement being made by the Russian government. But what's crazy about this is that not only is that amount 10% of the Russian GDP, and that's the exceptional amount, and let me pull it up, Russia GDP. They say it's 1.7, but we're thinking it's actually around 1.2 trillion right now, somewhere around the numbers it was at 2016. That's kind of the number we're working off of right now. We think it is, but we haven't gotten any official numbers. Not only is it 10% of the GDP, but the year before that, all Russian government spending across the entire Russian Federation only equaled 120 billion US dollars. And that means And that also included their military spending as well, which was around 60 billion, which made up nearly half of the government's spending at that time. That means that next year, Russian military spending is going to make up for 70 to 80% of the Russian government's expenses over the course of that next year. It may even be more than that, it may even be closer to 85%. And that means that every other kind of facility or function that the Russian government is currently involved in is going to pretty much grind to a halt to be able to try and afford this massive spending plan. And we don't even know what in the world they're going to be spending this stuff on. They've already been spending $60 billion this year, maybe even more than that, and they haven't really produced anything meaningful. We've seen that they've started to reintroduce the production of T-80s, but we haven't seen a lot of them roll off the line. I think we've only heard about 4 or 5 of them actually making it off the factory floor and towards the battlefield, and that's not a lot to show for $60 billion in military spending. And the $110 billion, I have no idea what they're even going to spend it on, but it's going to be devastating the Russian economy, Russian government spending, and it's probably going to further increase the economic decline of the Russian Federation even faster than we already anticipated, considering that this is such a massive part of their economy that's being thrown into the military. And not only that, it is going to be stripping almost every government institution in Russia of its funding except for the military, because they're certainly going to be trimming down nearly everything else to try and make sure to afford this massive spending goal. But moving on,
Or surely they're not going to try to raise like taxes instead, because I assume, like you're saying, they're probably going to cut budgets in other areas that probably hurt the Russian people, the average Russian, a lot more than the elite class in Russia. But I imagine maybe they might try to raise taxes. I'm not really sure how their tax situation works in Russia because I'm not an expert on their economy, but that'd be kind of interesting.
it would be really interesting to know how it works, and I don't know exactly how Russian taxes work either. I think you just don't pay it until someone finds out, and then you pay everything that you haven't paid then. But I don't know. It's a really interesting little scenario we got going on here. And also, really quickly, I'll also pull this up. Russian government spending. And so here we go. This is the number. This is from wilsoncenter.org, which actually put out an article on September 7th of 2023 talking about Russian military spending back then, and also all of the government spending that they had made in 2022. And so it was around 124 billion then. And so they're going to be bumping it up. And also, by the way, it was 124 billion with an expected military spending budget of $60 billion last year. But they're going to be bumping it up to $110 billion at the bare minimum, meaning that whatever they're spending next year, it is going to be absolutely killing the Russian government. It's already been killing it this year. It is going to suck the Russian government and the Russian economy dry by the time of the end of next year, or maybe even by the middle part of next year. But moving on from all of the news in Russia, well, actually, really quickly, you have one thing left. Many of y'all may have remembered the armed revolt that we got very little wind of inside of the area of Ingushetia, which is right next door to Chechnya, and then we didn't really hear a lot about that after that point. Well, it appears that the Ingush people are actually trying to do two things at one time. They're not just trying an armed rebellion, they're also trying a diplomatic rebellion as well, as they were actually met today by a pretty considerable Russian, Mikhail Podolyak, who is the advisor of the office of the president of Ukraine. Hang on, sorry, correction. He's the advisor of the office of the president of Ukraine. But he met with the Ingush leader today for the Ingush independence movement and spoke to him about the Ingush people wanting to break away from the Russian Federation, which is, of course, absolutely amazing to hear. Sorry for the misspeaking there, but absolutely amazing to hear that they will be trying to back up the Ingush people, and maybe that will cause enough chaos and insurrection in the border areas of the Russian Federation that the Chechens and maybe even the surrounding people, such as the Circassians, will also attempt uprisings as well and start to tie down massive amounts of Russian government resources and efforts in the Caucasus Mountain region, trying to put down insurrections and rebellions. But at the moment, this is only talk and only discussions about what may possibly happen in the future. But it is great to see that the Ukrainians are also keeping an eye on the Ingush situation with the Ingush people and supporting them in their cause. Of course, it's beneficial to Ukraine as well. But moving on from that, it's now time for us to finally move on out of Russia, and the international news still is not over. We still have a lot of war news and international news to go over, and a lot of location unknowns as well, but so many of y'all have been going ham in that live chat. And when I mean ham, I mean ham. I mean, we're looking at smoked hams down there right now, and they are looking good. But really quickly, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and the LSA is certainly hamming it up. And moving on to our first poll, It says both the UK and Pentagon say Ukraine aid is running out and is in peril of ending. So what are your thoughts? 43% said it's very serious and catastrophic. 31% said, it might get serious soon. 17% said it's not serious, everything is fine. And 8% said unsure. And on this one, I have to say that the situation with aid to Ukraine is becoming very concerning to me. I know the opinions vary wildly across the board on this issue. But with the Pentagon saying that we are very quickly running out of aid to send to Ukraine because we can't get any bills passed in the U.S. to send more aid at the moment, we're running very low. The UK has even come out and said that they are out right now, which is even worse. And to me, like I said last week, or I think it was Sunday or Saturday, I'm not sure why they suddenly ran out just like, in a couple of days. It's like all of a sudden it's all gone, even though we had gotten a ton of aid lined up for Ukraine. All of a sudden it's now missing. So it is very dire to me, and hopefully we can figure something out, at least temporarily, to make sure aid keeps going to Ukraine and it doesn't suddenly just stop. Because that would be very catastrophic. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's very concerning to hear, considering that the United States and the United Kingdom have been very large supporters of Ukraine. I'd have to say, though, that the American situation seems that it may possibly be a temporary one. The British situation, I don't really know much about, to be honest. It seems like it may be semi-permanent, maybe temporary, or maybe even permanent. It's very unclear what their funding situation is looking like right now. But one thing I do have to say is that hopefully we will see that the British will start to pump a massive amount of effort into their defense industry, so that way it's around. Because as many of y'all may know, the British defense industry has largely been going the way of the dodo for about the past 70 years or so, really since the end of the Second World War. Their aircraft industry was killed by poor planning and also poor foresight by some certain people in the British government who ended up sidelining most aircraft in the hopes that surface-to-air missiles would do most of the work, and then they found out that wasn't really the case. And so then by that point it was too late. The British aircraft industry had died. Their shipping industry and their shipbuilding industry has also been on the decline as well, and even in their armed forces, just in the general small arms for their army, that's also been in a decent amount of decline as well. Hopefully we'll see that all of that starts to make a turnaround here in the future, because one thing is for certain, the British do have to continue to help Ukraine. Everyone has to give a pitched-in effort in helping Ukraine win this war, and of course they need foreign support to be able to do that. But also, I'm hoping to see that the British also begin to rebuild their military up to a very good size as well, because the British are a very integral part of the Western world, the NATO alliance, and it's important for at least the key members, which I would say at this point is the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Poland, to have sizable enough militaries that they can go up against whatever threat may come our way, especially being thrown at us from the Russians, or maybe even instability that they'll be trying to create inside of the NATO alliance. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because it is a little concerning to hear, but hopefully things will be looking up here in a bit in the future. Also, really quickly, I have to say this because I'm seeing that Matthew's having to go and start declaring martial law in the live chat. We do not have politics on this channel. And while I did say just a moment ago some things about certain people in the British government doing stuff, that was a loophole in our no politics rule, because you can talk politics as long as it's before 1960. But you cannot use that as a loophole to try and talk about modern politics as in what they would have looked like in the 60s. We do not have politics on this channel. We are completely non-biased. We do not take a political side. We will never take a political side, because all it does is divide people on the discussion of Ukraine. That's all it does. So I would like that y'all respect our rule that we have no politics on this channel. If you have an opinion about a politician, it's best to keep it to yourself and just vote the way you would like during the next election. Beyond that, or you can go talk anywhere else. I mean, really, a lot of other places continue to allow political discussions, or they lean heavily in one direction or the other. And there are many other live streams out there that will let you spew the exact political beliefs you want. But this channel is not the place. This is not going to be a battlefield for each group to stand their ground and die on the hill. This is not the place. We're just
that. And like Mace said, bring back the bull moose party, for goodness sakes. We need that bull moose back, man.
Man, I got that bull moose in me. But anyways,
I don't even seriously know even what the bull moose party was even about, but I just like the name of it, and Roosevelt was a part of it, so that's the only reason I say that. So I don't even know what it's about.
And also, I saw someone Let's see. I saw someone say, I thought it was related to the aid in Ukraine about the politics. A lot of people are trying to make it that way. And here's the problem. And I'm going to just lay it out to y'all the way I see it. That is playing into the Russians' hands to make that a one-sided political issue, because you're going to alienate everyone on the other side. It's going to happen. If you sit there and say, oh, my party is the only one that's so just and right to support the Ukrainian people, the other side's demons and don't want to support them, they will end up not supporting them. It is better to say, I hope that everyone supports Ukraine, and they actually will, because it won't be a situation that's up for argument or discussion or for an opposition. It's something that everyone largely agrees on, except for fringe groups. And so I think it's very important to make sure that nobody tries to poke sticks in everyone else's eye. We are fighting a war right now. And usually in wars, governments create coalitions where both sides work together to make sure that this war is won. And I think that in this moment, that is something that is needed, and it's something that is certainly needed to be encouraged by everyone. And everyone needs to be an active part of ensuring that everything works smoothly with everyone across the board, regardless of who they are, where they come from, or what they do, and make sure that the Ukrainians are supported and are able to win this war by the end of it. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next poll here. Just going to say this up front. This individual is somewhat polarizing, so please keep it civil, even though I know some folks are very, very upset. The poll question says, do you believe Ukraine should attack Elon Musk, verbally that is, for his comments, or convince him to change his mind? 39% said convince him to change his mind, 34% said attack Musk for a pro-Russian comment, 17% said, I'm kind of somewhat indifferent, and 9% said unsure. And I will say this. That I certainly do not agree with Elon Musk's comments that he made recently about Ukraine. Obviously, that does not align with what we think, because we're all pro-Ukraine here. But I don't think the best solution is to attack Elon Musk, and here's why. Elon has obviously a ton of resources, and he also has companies as well that can help out Ukraine. While I understand why Ukraine would want to lash out, because obviously the comments are very angering, I think Ukraine is doing themselves a disservice by doing that, because they could get access to more Starlink technology. They could get on his good side to allow more unrestricted use of Starlink, as well as more monetary support to help fund their war effort. And especially with countries like the UK and the US faltering on support, I think it's more crucial than ever that they get people like Musk on their side, because with him being one of the wealthiest people in the world, he has the resources to help out. So I think that's probably the wiser move. But, I really can't blame Ukraine for getting upset. But, can't let your emotions guide every single decision that you make, or otherwise you'll make bad ones. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would have to agree with Matthew and also the large majority of y'all. I think it would be much better to try and persuade him to join the Ukrainian side than to cast him out and try and treat him like he's evil. One has to remember that once you keep doing that over and over and over, you eventually lose all of your friends that support you. That's something very important to remember. And we have to remember that way back at the beginning of the war, he did provide the Starlink system for free. I don't know what's happened in the background that's caused the change. And I have to say, I certainly don't agree with it at all, and I strongly detest what he's doing. But I still think it's very important to always keep in mind, this is a guy that is an individual citizen. He is an individual. He's entitled to his right to say what he wants, whether we agree or disagree with him. But at the same time, he's a very influential and powerful person that can end up supporting Ukraine, and has supported Ukraine in the past. And I think it's very important for everyone, the U.S. government and Ukraine as well, to encourage him to continue his support for Ukraine and change his mind on what he's doing, because it is, of course, not beneficial to Ukraine. It's not beneficial to American strategic interests. And not only that, he also has a large part to play in the abilities of the Ukrainian armed forces through the Starlink system. And so I think it's very important that we make sure to play this well. And, I see a lot of people in the live chat saying that the guy should be crucified. But I have to say this, I don't agree with what he said at all. And in fact, I find it to be really detestable. But at the same time, you have to remember that everyone in the country, in the United States, is entitled to their opinion, and I strongly disagree with it. I'll make that very clear. But at the same time, I'm not going to just absolutely lambaste the dude for what he's saying. I'm not going to sit there and act like he needs to now be put up on a cross and crucified or anything like that. That's going a little too far. Strongly disagree. Completely don't see where he's coming from. But I do think that it's always important to make sure to not always sit there and attack people who disagree with you, but instead try and conversate with them and let them see our side and the benefits to what we're saying. We're all pro-Ukrainian. No one's going to ever make us change our minds. It will never happen. And all of y'all know that as well. Y'all know that if anyone comes up to y'all aren't going to be changing your mind. But one thing's important to remember is that if you see people who are pro-Russian or are leaning towards being a pro-Russian, always just have a little chit-chat with them and tell them why you think it's important that Ukraine is supported. Tell them about American strategic interest. Tell them about everything. I mean, tell them about anything and everything that you'd want to tell them about, that why you think it's important, the humanitarian side of things, all that. Maybe they haven't thought about that before, and maybe they'll agree with you. Because I always think it's bad to burn bridges and shut people out just because they disagree with you. Because, hell, maybe you will talk to them, and they'll see that there isn't anything bad about your side, and maybe they'll join it. I mean, the chance is a little small, but, you know, I still think that's an important thing to keep in mind. But with that...
Through that. But also real quick, I see some folks asking, what did he say? And the thing that he did that really got everyone upset was Musk posted a meme of sorts, and you really had to see the meme to know the context of it, but it was a comment about Zelensky asking for more aid for the country, and it was essentially mocking Zelensky for asking for aid. So obviously that will upset a lot of people that are pro-Ukraine, understandably, because that goes against helping out Ukraine, which is currently fighting a war for its survival. But one thing I did see a Ukrainian parliament member do is they tweeted out on Twitter today inviting Elon Musk to Ukraine, even after seeing those comments, so that way he can learn more about their country and what they're doing to fight off the Russians, in the hopes that Elon will see on the ground the suffering that the Ukrainians are going through, assuming that he hasn't seen it already, and that he'll change his mind. I think that's the way, because surely attacking the guy isn't going to make him change his mind. That's just going to make him even more against Ukraine if he's already against it. But remember, at first Elon was for Ukraine. So the folks out there saying that he won't change his mind, I disagree with that strongly. I think he can be persuaded, because originally he was for Ukraine, and then all of a sudden somehow he got turned around to be against Ukraine. So, you know, I think he can be changed, and I think Ukraine would be very wise to make a good faith effort to try to change his mind. And then if he doesn't, then, you know, they're free to say whatever they want. But I wouldn't burn that bridge too early.
And I would say that what the Ukrainians have done, offering an invitation to him to come to Ukraine, I think that's an incredibly nice gesture, especially considering what he said. And instead of just blasting the guy, they're actually going to bring him over and be like, wait, whoa, I think you're making a misjudgment. You know, come over here and see our side, see what we're dealing with. And I'm sure you'll come around and see why we're like this and why we're always, you know, going around and asking for support and always trying to keep everyone's minds and attention on what's happening to us right now. And I think that's honestly a really good move, because what's the worst that could happen? I mean, the worst that could happen is that he doesn't change his mind, but the Ukrainians still gave it a shot. There's a chance right now that he sits there and goes, actually, you know what? I do change my mind again. I do support Ukraine, because this is actually pretty bad what's going on over here. And then it's a positive. It's a positive that you're throwing out of the window if you don't give it a shot. So I got to give the Ukrainians a huge applause for having such a diplomatic bone about them to be able to do something like that, and huge credit, because many people out there in the world are, you know, vindictive enough that they wouldn't take an offer like that, or they wouldn't even extend an olive branch. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, that was our last poll, so we are moving on to our Super Chat questions. And up first, we have a very generous $50 donation from the Jesus UCSB. We've had a lot of people try to imitate Jesus UCSB tonight, a lot of imposters, but we know the real one. And he is here tonight, and thank you very much, Jesus, for that support. And he says, Hola, I've been busy this week, very busy, LOL. And I have a song for my fans who want smoke with Jesus UCSB, who want smoke with Jesus. LSA homie, LSA tank core.
And thank you so much for the support, Jesus UCSB. And also, you have been very busy this week. I hate to hear what you've been going through. Of course, the mob, that mob is going for you as well now, and they actually go after several of our viewers and harass them, much like you. And I always feel sorry for that and hate that that's happening to y'all. But of course, I'm also proud that y'all stand with us and don't back down because of these thugs' threats and what they've been doing behind the scenes. But still, I gotta thank you so much once again for the support. There have been people coming in trying to have smoke. I've even seen the YouTube fraud department, Matthew, which sounds a lot like the credit card fraud department that calls you up and sits there and says, give me your credit card info, you know, and all that crap. It sounds like,
you know, when those calls always come in, I always make a point to call them back. This is how kind of crazy I am a little bit, I'll call that number back and absolutely troll the hell out of them. I'll keep them on the phone for like 20 or 30 minutes, and then at the last second I go, "Gotcha, sucker," and they'll be like, "F you, F you."
Oh man.
Man, I've had so much fun. I used to do that a lot when I wasn't, extremely busy in law school, and every ounce of my day was taken up with that. But back in the day, I used to get into a little bit of that.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, I gotta say, I respect a little bit of smoke here and there, and I gotta say, Jesus, you were the guy to give out smoke. I mean, if you were a thing other than a person, you would be a smoke machine because you're absolutely throwing out the smoke every day to those folks, and I gotta respect it, especially considering that they pretty much target you and harass you almost like they do us now. So I've got to give you a huge credit on that, and also, thank you so much once again, Jesus, for being an LSA tanker and being a part of the LSA tank corps, really the commander of it. And thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. Because support like yours does help us to make this thing possible behind the scenes, helps us to keep this thing running, and helps us to do it as a job, which of course spites the bots and spites that clown. And by the way, if you want to know how much smoke we've been trying to get, we were trying to get that guy process served in Ukraine, and then that didn't turn out because we couldn't get anyone to do it. But still, hey, wasn't a bad shot. We still gave it a shot, and I gotta say, what's wrong with trying? And then the guy threatened to send process servers to God, which sounds very, very civil and sane. That's something that a sane person would say, Matthew, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, man. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for support, helping us to keep this thing running, Jesus, because folks like you help to make this thing possible.
Indeed. And up next, moving on to our second super chat of the night, we have one from Marcio, who puts in a $50 donation.
Hey!
And thank you very much, Marcio, very much for that support. And he says, please let me know your comments on the World War II Australian Sentinel tank's front machine gun, and please get the pics on the stream.
Oh, God. I knew it was going to happen, Matthew. Oh, my God. If you have kids, take them away from the screen. We've got to do it. He asked about it. We've got to pull this thing up. Oh Lord. Oh. Oh man. Oh no, Matthew. Oh God, this is gonna be bad, Matthew. This is gonna be terrible. Let's see here.
Terrible, I'm telling you.
Oh man, I'm telling you. Oh no. Oh. So
oh no.
Here it is.
Oh no.
This is a Sentinel tank.
Oh dear, what in the hell?
That is the front machine gun in the hull, the front machine gun for the hull gunner. I got to thank you for the support, Marcio. I don't really know how to comment on that. I know.
Get your hands off.
What are you arresting me for? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? But thank you for the support. And I gotta tell you, my comments are obscene, degenerate, downright ludicrous. I sound like that attorney from Seinfeld, man.
Egregious, preposterous, and atrocious.
Yeah, I sound like that. But that's terrible. I don't know who designed that. I have a feeling that whoever designed that was not in a good frame of mind. I mean, it was World War II in Australia, so it must have been a tough time for everyone. But whoever was doing that, they were in a bad mindset right there. I've got to be honest with you. And I gotta say, it's terrible. I remember seeing this tank at Bovington, by the way. There's the one at Bovington. And I remember seeing it. I didn't make a comment about it, and I don't think anyone else saw it, Matthew, but me, because I was the one really looking at the tanks. But yeah, I saw that, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with the designer of this tank? And I'm not even going to say more than that, but still, thank you so much once again for support, Marcio, and supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. Folks like you help us to do crazy things like that in the middle of the stream and keep this thing running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air being ourselves, joking around like that, or pulling up stuff like that. We would have to appease sponsors and AdSense running these streams, and thanks to y'all's continued support every single night, y'all help us to make it possible where we can do weird and funny things like that. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that pretty well. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving back into the international news, into the location unknowns, and the frontline news.
And this one goes to Duncan VR, who puts in a $40 donation. And thank you very much as well, Duncan, for that support. And he says, Bamuba, bada boom, ba quack meow. In the last show, Bamu, I thought we were back in the 1930s Germany.
Geschlick, my lightning!
He said it for me. He said, oh, good. I can't even say that, Duncan. That's something that YouTube would come down hard on us for. But they said, Baba. Enforcer really did a good a battlefield from World War II thing. We're going to build that wall. Bah, Mukwak. I don't know what wall you're talking about. Oh, must be talking about Poland. Oh dear.
Oh, man. Oh, I'm telling you. Oh. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Duncan VR. And of course, throwing in the traditional animal noises. Those are traditional. And I gotta say, we respect it. We respect it. And I gotta thank you so much for being here tonight and throwing them on in, because you're helping us to make this stream possible by making those animal noises. Also, I thank you so much for appreciating the Sunday night Geschenk, because I did that completely because someone threw in a donation over $100 to Razom. And I said, if anyone throws one in at this point in the stream, I will do the longest one I've ever done. And I did it. And I'm probably never doing that again. But still, it was hilarious, at least to me, at least to Matthew. I think we were both sleep deprived at that point, so anything was funny. But I loved it. Hopefully all of y'all loved it as well. Not in that kind of way, though. I hope y'all didn't love it in that kind of way, a nostalgic kind of way, but in a funny kind of way, where everyone went, huh, that's really funny, to laugh at that crazy weirdo freak guy from World War II. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Duncan VR, and Bamuba, quack, quack, meow. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from this question segment, but thank you so much once again for the support. And we also got to hear today that the Polish, the Lithuanians, and I believe the Ukrainians, of course, have actually come up with an agreement to where the grain's going. In short, if you want to read the article, you can click on it, but I get like a million ads clicking on the Associated Press, so I'm not going to like sit on it for long. Pretty much the deal is that Poland is going to be an intermediary that's going to take the grain from Ukraine out of Poland to a Polish port or to another country in Europe and try and sell it there. So that way they don't end up overflowing the Polish economy with incredibly cheap grain, and that grain will be able to make it around the world to Ukraine's original grain purchasers, such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and China, which were large purchasers of the grain. It's something that appeases everyone. The Ukrainians get a market for their grain. The Polish make sure to protect their own farmers, which is, of course, appeasing everyone. Speaking of a little bit of news near the border, we also got to hear that the Polish have sent back some Leopard 2s back in action after being damaged. They've now been refurbished completely and are now going to be making their way back to Ukraine, and it's actually this Leopard 2 here, to once again carry on the fight. Which is really cool to know that the refurbishment facilities are working full swing and finally getting some Leopard 2s back out the door and right back into fighting action, hopefully very soon. Moving on from that, and into Serbia, we also heard that the Kosovans today declared that while the Serbs have decreased the amount of forces they have on their border in half, from 3 brigades to a brigade and about a half of another brigade, they still say that the Kosovans have a plan to annex northern Serbia. This largely just goes through all of the incredibly nitty-gritty details of what that looks like, but according to the Kosovans, the situation is not over. There are currently 4,500 NATO forces under the K4 banner that are inside of Kosovo right now, trying to protect the country from any potential Serbian attack. The Serbians still have about 4,700 soldiers along the Kosovan border, and they are still positioned in forward operating bases with tanks, artillery, and enough support equipment that they would be able to launch a limited offensive into Kosovo. The Serbs have also said that they will possibly be able to do that incredibly well, but everyone's always hyped up about their military until it gets into action and then they see how badly it goes. So who knows if that statement's true or not. Kind of doubting it, considering it's Serbia, and Serbia isn't really known for having the best military out there. But we'll have to wait and see if a war breaks out. How badly will it go for the Serbs, or how good will it go for them? We also saw that inside of Romania, we heard that the Romanian government is going to be sending their own NATO contingent to Kosovo as well. They will be under the banner of the K4 units and will be guided by the coalition commander in that area if anything starts to break out. But great to see Romania, a bordering country to Serbia, chipping in some forces to protect the sovereignty of Kosovo. Moving on from that, and on into the port city of Odessa, we also got to hear that Ukraine was able to shoot down some more drones today. And I gotta say, they did quite a good job. Here it is. We can see they got the spotlight out. They're whipping out the gats. And they going for it. They going ham.
Dang, they're letting loose.
And they got it.
I'm always shocked when they can shoot those drones down with small arms. That is a feat.
It really is. Like, they're not using shotguns. It's not like a massive rate of fire or anything. They're just getting lucky every single time, it seems. But, I mean, if you get lucky that many times, there's got to be skill at that point, because there's no way you can be lucky this many times and shoot down that many drones that way. But I got to give it to the riflemen in Odessa. They do as much work as the Gepards at this point in protecting the skies over the city of the largest port inside of Ukraine. In fact, It's the largest port inside of Ukraine, even when Sevastopol was still a part of Ukraine before 2014. Odessa was technically larger than Sevastopol as a commercial port, but the thing is, and this is actually a little bit of an interesting fact, Sevastopol is almost entirely a military port. That's its whole purpose. This is just a military shipyard. Odessa is almost nothing but a commercial shipyard instead, or a commercial dock, more so, or a commercial port. So they kind of serve two entirely different purposes. Odessa is more on the economic side of things. Sevastopol is more on the military side of things. So you can kind of see why the Russians didn't really care about Odessa that much, because it was all about strategic interests. So Sevastopol, of course, is the more important of the two. But moving on from that, great to see the anti-drone forces in Odessa working hard. And moving on from that, we also got to see that the Ukrainian air defense not only did well near Odessa, they did well across the entirety of the country. Last night, they were able to shoot down 29 Shahed drones and 1 Iskander-K cruise missile. They did incredibly good last night.
They're putting in the work.
Man, they're putting in the work, putting in the hours, and taking what's theirs. I mean, it's great. It's looking good. Call these guys the Rock, because you can smell what they're cooking, and it's straight up Shaheds burning up in the sky and turning into well-done cooked chars of wreckage. But wonderful to see that they were able to do that well just overnight, and hopefully the Ukrainian air defense will continue to stand up over the coming days, weeks, and months as the war goes on and Russian attacks continue. Moving on from that and into our location unknowns, our first clip showed us a Russian peon getting destroyed.
I said music was not my choice.
Man,
they don't like
it's
the music,
not my
apparently.
choice either. And when you see the peon down there, and you see the Russians walking off right there, where are we going, Vadim? We're going away. Bad things will happen. Bad things happened.
And that's why they call it the peon, because, you know, it just kind of got pissed on.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, they call it a peon because that thing, when it burns, is yellow and kind of nice looking, like a peon flower. Or a peony, more so. There's no peon flower.
Peony.
Man, when you're a part of the SPG unit, but you can't really speak well, what piece do you serve on? Pee on me! It's
Man,
like, I don't know
unit's
about...
kind of a little bit of a freak
Man.
or something.
Aw, man, pee on me. But
Oh dear. Oh, no.
anyways, moving on from that on to the next clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian S-200 being fired in the ground-to-ground role. This is actually a very rare way to use the 2S-100 or the S-200 missiles, is to use them in a ground-to-ground role. It's a surface-to-air missile meant to fire, meant to be fired at aircraft and destroy them. But the Ukrainians have started to rig them up where they are fired from the ground and launched at ground targets. And here's a clip of one of them being launched that way. You see the missile spooling up. We're about to see it fire. Any second now. And there it goes. It's about to launch. And there goes the boosters, and now the missile is on its way.
That had like 4 motors in that one.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. I'll pull it up really quickly because it's like a little missile. It's like a little rocket really that you would send to space. But let me go to the S-200 missile system. Here we have it right there. And these little things that you see attached up here, the motors that are right there, those are actually completely separate from the actual missile. They're boosters meant to get it off the launcher, and once it picks up enough speed, these little boosters pop off the missile, and then the missile travels on its own power with its own motor. It's a really interesting little system, very archaic though. I believe these were introduced in the 60s, and they were introduced in 1967. So incredibly old, probably not effective against aircraft anymore, and that's probably why we're seeing the Ukrainians spin them into a ground-to-ground role instead of a ground-to-air role like they previously were.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, pretty neat. Man, it was like, interesting. Anyways, moving on from that and on into our next bit of location unknown news, we also got to see the Foreign Legion was able to make some ground today in an unknown location and took a Russian prisoner. And also, Matthew, I got to say this, Matthew. Look at that little rear sight right there, Matthew. Look at that. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, it's the spoon.
Yeah, it's the spoon. Man, you know what happens when you get a little bayonet and you attach it, a tiny bayonet to this thing, it becomes a spork. Also, I'm gonna mute that. Matthew, doesn't this look like an FN M4? It's got like the vertical foregrip, you know, the same little rails and everything. This is like
Yeah, it looks just like it. It's like almost identical.
This is like a collector's grade FN M4. I nerd out on those kinds of things, but we see the Russian coming out. We see the second one coming out. And a third one. And we now see them processing them.
That dude was coming out walking with his hands like a T-Rex or something, the way he was holding his hands out in front of him.
Dude,
did you see that?
He really was. Hey, hang on, let's go back and see that again. So this guy comes out normally. Yeah, what the hell is that?
Rawr, I'm a dinosaur.
Dude, this guy looks like he's about to sit there and do that zombie shuffle or whatever the hell they did, Matthew, back in the day.
Yeah, I don't even know, man.
Man, he came out of there. He was, man, you know, being a Russian, he's going, brains, I have none. But anyway, so you can see them getting processed now. And also, by the way, that is the most orange Bakelite I have ever seen, Matthew. This thing is so orange. It looks like an actual orange. That's insane looking.
That's like that first gen Bakelite like formulation or something.
And Matthew, this is an FN M4, a collector's M4, because look at that backstock. I gotta pull this up real quick for y'all, because that is literally exactly an FN M4. And let me go grab one, and here we go. And so here it is. 1 second, it's pulling up. There we go. So let me show y'all a couple of things that are sticking out to me here that tell me it's this rifle in particular. Okay, so at the start of the video, when you see the foregrip down there, and notice the foregrip, it's a long foregrip, and it also has this little twisty bottom to it, and that's what actually clamps it onto its lock rail. You can see that same foregrip right there. Exact same grooves on it and everything, exact same twist cap. And then, what's even more telling, has the exact same little handguard things here on the sides of the barrel, which is pretty interesting. Has the same front sight, and it also has the same rear sight as well. You can see the little flip-up rear sight right there. And then right at the end, you see a little bit of the buttstock right there. And look at that. Look at the little groove things here in the stock. And you can see the exact same thing on the FN's stocks right there for their M4 collector's grades. So that looks a lot like a military collector's M4 made by FN Herstal. Probably fairly new, or it may just actually be a U.S. Army M4 that was sent to Ukraine and they're using it, but it is largely just the U.S. Army M4 that was being used in that video right there. Now,
my question is, anytime I see like an FN gun of any sort and you say like FN Herstal, my question is, what did Herstal do to deserve that?
I don't know, man. Man, every time someone gets shot with an effing gun, they go, effing Herstal!
Oh, dear.
But you know...
And by the way, we're being facetious, by the way. I'm sure somebody's going to be like, you don't know what that means? Oh, yes, we do know what that means. It stands for something, obviously.
But also, Matthew, I think you might not know this. Do you know that FN actually sells M249 saws to the public?
I didn't know that, but one thing I do know about FN, one of the few things I know really certainly about them, is they are crazy expensive and
look
overpriced.
At that. $10,500 for a saw.
Although a saw, though, that's pretty clean. I like that. You can't find these anywhere.
But it's closed bolt semi-automatic.
Well, I mean, you might be able to find some of those somewhere.
Well, I mean, if it was automatic, I kind of get it. Still, I think it's really expensive. Semi-automatic, though, no. I would never spend that much on a semi-automatic machine gun. It kind of defeats the whole point of it being a machine gun for it to be semi-automatic. Still cool as hell, though. Don't get me wrong. But I still wouldn't get it. And also, $10,500, that's expensive as hell. That's way too expensive for anything. But anyways, moving on from that, just thought I'd show y'all that that's a FN Collector's M4. I think that's just really cool. And then the clip ends. But with that, great to see the Foreign Legion doing their thing, doing their work, and moving on from that and into the next clip, we also get to see Baba Yaga at work. Baba Yaga, booyah!
Baba Yaga.
And also, JB said, quality but bad customer service. Ah, yes. We have the patrician here in the chat. He lives in a villa. He lives in a villa or something to be able to get an FN. But anyways, here's the clip.
The Baba Yaga song, blöd.
Man. Man, Baba Yaga be turned. Baba Yaga be turned up. But we can see them.
Baba Yaga be pulling through your neighborhood, if you know what I mean.
Do Baba Yaga be spinning the block, please. But anyways, we can see them getting Baba Yaga ready. See them getting the drone set up. Man, this is actually a little bit of work here for Baba Yaga. And we now see them flying Baba Yaga away to destiny. And look at that thing. It's too freaking... Oh my
massive.
God! Dude, you can see the bomb blow up over the horizon. Look at this. Watch. Poof. Oh my Lord.
That is crazy. Good Lord.
Dude, this thing is literally a frontline bomber. This isn't even a drone anymore. It's a whole-on light bomber. And now it's coming back. They had to put the spotlight on Baba Yaga because it's that scary that even the Ukrainians don't trust it to not run away. But that's the end of the clip, and an amazing bit of work from the Baba Yaga. Moving on from that, we also got to see a brand new kind of Ukrainian drone. Many of y'all heard a while ago that the Antonov company was going to be teaming up with a French company to start producing drones. And the primary concern of the Antonov company was to start producing drones entirely. Aircraft were going to be sidelined for the drone production. And they have come up with something today that is really interesting, and they've unveiled it to the public. This is the AAROC, or the AROC, as it's really called, and it's the male version of the drone, as opposed to the female version. We can see it. Pretty interesting.
It's like literally like a single prop plane with just like a drone body on it.
Dude, this thing literally looks like a Super Tucano that they turned into a drone. I'll show y'all all a Super Tucano in a minute, because I swear that's like the same propeller assembly and front nose section of a Super Tucano. So let me go pull that up.
I mean, if it is, that'd be pretty smart, because instead of designing the entire thing new from the ground up, just use a curtain design and, you know, retrofit it.
So let's see here. Yeah, that thing is uncanny similar to a Super Tucano on the front. So, here's a Super Tucano right there. Gotta say, pretty sick looking, not gonna lie. Pretty neat little plane here. But look at the lower, like right below the propeller's cone, nose cone. You see that little air intake right there. Largely the same shape on that one. This is a 5-bladed propeller. This is a 5-bladed propeller as well. And you can also see the exact same exhaust nozzles in almost the exact same place on the AROC as in the Super Tucano. And when you look at the fuselage as well, it really does look like it's a like a Super Tucano fuselage where they removed the cockpit. Like, check it out. Right there. Notice the lines here. And then let's go over here to the Super Tucano. And notice the lines there. Of course, the tail section looks entirely different, but the fuselage itself is just very similar. Very, very similar. I feel like they either took a lot of inspiration from a Super Tucano, or they're buying Super Tucanos as the base. They're just buying the airframes, and then they're refitting them into what they need. Regardless of what
definitely looks like they've extended the wings, because the wings look a little bit thinner and longer than the other one you just showed, the Super Tucano. Because for obvious reasons, for aerodynamics and to give it longer range, but it's been modified pretty decently if that is a Super Tucano.
Yeah, and also Rider's Eye did say wing configuration is different. Yes, it is, and I believe it is most likely for high altitude flying. Longer wings give you better lift, and it's much better at higher altitude. Better for fuel efficiency, flight duration, really everything that a drone is looking for. The longer wings give it that ability. It does also appear that the rear part of the fuselage is completely different than the Super Tucano in every way, but most of the fuselage, if you remove the cockpit from a Super Tucano and just made that area of the airplane flush with the rest of it, that looks a lot like one. And so I'm thinking that they may have just really taken a lot of inspiration from the Super Tucano and went, hey, let's turn that thing into a drone, because that can't go wrong. And they're honestly not that far off the mark. The U.S. Air Force was actually considering for a while bringing this thing into the U.S. Air Force. It sounds kind of bizarre, I know, because it looks archaic. You know, it looks like something from World War II that was made in the modern day, and it kind of is. But the whole reason behind a propeller plane that provides close air support is that this little plane here is supposed to be able to have an impressively long loiter time, so that way you can continue to help out the ground forces whenever needed. So it doesn't show up, has an incredibly short loiter time, has to either drop everything right then or just drop one item and then fly back and then leave. It could just hang out around the area forever until the infantry call on it, and then it can be used. That's kind of the whole point of the Super Tucano, and I think that's probably the same thing they're going with this drone, with a very similar design, is incredibly long loiter time, so that way it can continue to surveil and conduct reconnaissance on the Russians, and it may be able to mount weapons and then use those against Russian ground forces as well, although we didn't see any weapons mounted onto it. Still, a very interesting design by Antonov, and maybe we'll see that this thing is able to be comparable to a Bayraktar, but who knows? The Bayraktar seems to be a lot smaller than this one, just looking at it at a glance. But moving on from that, and on into our final bit of location unknowns, we got to see the Russian casualty report for the day. And
hey, we got 5 Bobcats, let's go!
Man, let's get it! And I gotta say, beautiful. 5 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. Absolutely wonderful. Absolutely impressive.
I kind of wish we could add the Chinese sub as like an honorary loss on this chart right here. But man, I'm telling you.
What's up, Beijing?
What's up, Beijing? We just lost one of our most expensive subs. Wazao.
Man, but you know, the Japanese, I'm sorry, not Japanese, the Chinese actually have another submarine in line to replace the Type 94. You know what it's called, Matthew?
You said the Chinese do?
Yes.
What's it called?
It's called, and you wouldn't believe this, Matthew, I'm going to blow you away, the Type 96.
Damn, you're kidding me.
I know, the namings are epic, but this is a 3D rendering of what the Chinese say it's going to look like.
You know, that's something that the Chinese do really well. Is they've always been really good at making their stuff really marketable. I like those. Like the Type 96, how can you not buy one? Like, everybody's going to want one of those.
Yeah, and then also, here's another thing from globalsecurity.org. No one's actually seen real pictures, I do believe, of this thing up to this point. I think one of them may have been made, but it's never conducted sea trials, and no pictures have been taken of it that we know of publicly. But it's actually assumed to look more like this in this picture here than the one I just showed you. But nobody really has a good idea of what this thing really looks like.
It's a revolutionary design, I'm telling you. This is just like never before seen type stuff right here. That secret menu sub.
Dude, it's going to come out, it's going to look like a Virginia-class submarine or something like that. It's going to be the most mundane-looking thing, and everyone's going to be like, oh, well, I guess the Chinese are not original again. You know, here comes their same-looking crap. Like, they just rip off the U.S. every single time, like with the Humvees and the M16s, just over and over.
You just wait. You just wait. China is going to eventually copy one of our submarines so closely, or one of our vessels whatsoever, that the U.S. is going to think that they stole one of our vessels at some point because they're copying it so closely.
They probably will. And also, by the way, while we're on submarines, let me show you this, man. Because if you really thought that the little Chinese submarine was ugly because of how it carried its nuclear missiles, let me introduce you to something really ugly. The North Korean submarine that was just launched like last month or so. This thing looked so advanced. It is a Foxtrot class submarine. You can tell by the stern. So, and also, by the way, that's what it looked like before. This is it. The one here in the B section. That's what it looked like before. Because look at the stern of the sub. See that rudder structure, the rear part of the hull, how all that's shaped? Look at that. That's the exact same. That's a Foxtrot-class submarine that now has a nuclear power plant inside of it, and they put this giant bulge. It's literally, it's twice the height of the actual submarine's hull itself, so that way you could fit some nuclear missiles into it.
It looks like something that might be built to be on top of the water, like a traditional boat instead of a submarine. Like, go back to that thing you just showed a second ago.
This thing?
Yeah, that looks like it has like a hole on it like a boat would have instead of a submarine.
Dude, this thing looks like you're going to go fishing in it, man. It doesn't even look like a real submarine. Like, it's just terrible. It's absolutely awful. Like,
it looks like if I try to design a submarine with no knowledge of like marine stuff or anything, this is probably something along the lines of what I would come up with, and that's about what North Korea's done.
Yeah, it's terrible. It really is. And let me see if I can find another picture here of this thing, because not a lot of pictures were had. There was a press release. There we go. Here's the full-on picture of the bulge behind the conning tower that houses the missiles. It's like, that tells you that North Korea is, like, you know, they're trying to make it look like they're advanced and they're trying to flex and everything, But if they were so advanced, it's like, why couldn't you just build a normal nuclear submarine that was actually big enough to house the nuclear missiles? You know, like we do.
They called it a Franken sub in this article right here. They were bashing it too.
Man, it really is a Franken sub. You know, everyone said, oh man, that's advanced. It's really advanced. And then you see pictures of it and you're like, that is just a Foxtrot in disguise right here. That's been really well, like, costumed and looks really good. And they painted it dark black to make it look modern. But it's this. It was this before it was refitted. And I can't get that out of my mind. Until the day I die, I'm never giving the North Koreans a single lick of credit for anything, because this is just cheap. This is a attempt to look modern. This thing is probably the easiest thing to detect in the water. I'm sure the nuclear reactor is already leaking. The North Koreans in there are growing arms and legs and melting apart and stuff. It's probably horrendous. But anyways, moving on from that rabbit hole. That's also another one of those submarines too. They paint them green. Some of them are actually painted green.
That's what happens when the narcos get their hands on a little bit extra money. They build one like this.
Oh my god!
Painted
Dude, this
sea
thing really
green.
does
Yeah.
look like a narco sub, doesn't it?
It does. It's all like rusty on the bottom and stuff, and painting like that sea green on it. Look at how thin the tower is on it. They're like all crowded on that one by 1 square foot little area, trying to look over the edge of the balcony right there.
Man. Dude, and they also have the bridge just, you know, jutting out from the conning tower a little bit, like it's the Middle Ages, so that way you can piss and shit through the floor or something.
And look at that
like,
little rinky-dink, like North Korean flag on the back. Like, even that's pitiful looking.
yeah, and look, man, for the North Koreans to be so big into their image and stuff, the submarine is so bad off that they can't even clean the rust off of it. There's rust all over this thing at every single access hatch. This looks like the worst maintained submarine out there in the world right now.
It looks like he's gonna have a horn like whenever it takes off.
Dude, oh no, it's the North Koreans.
Oh, there they are pulling up in their old junk.
Man,
it's like you thought that China made some nice, like, didn't they used to have like ships called junks?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, now North Korea's making some new junks. This is the modern version of the junk.
Man, the Chinese made junks, but now the North Koreans are here with the next big thing. They call it trash.
Man, even China's like stepping back on this one, like, oh damn, y'all have outdone our junk by like 10 miles. Good on you.
Oh damn, they wild. But also, hey, by the way, I don't mean to rabbit hole much, but here's some of the midget subs that they have as well. You know, there's a Romeo class, or I think it's a Foxtrot class in the Soviet Navy. But there's a Romeo. There's their midget subs. And their midget sub, by the way, one of them actually got caught in a fishing net of a South Korean fishing vessel, and the North Korean captain of the sub freaked out so badly, I think he ended up killing all of his crew members, like with a pistol, killed them all, and then blew his own head off. And then by the time the South Koreans figured out what had happened and what was slowing their ship down, and they pulled this thing up, they opened up the hatch and looked in and went, oh my god, they're all dead. They were all dead. It was just messed up. Happened back in like
the North Korean put in the resume that said a team player, loved to work in teams, loved to work with people, never prone to anger or anything like that. And then look what happened.
Dude, that captain said, do it for the team, do it for the vine. He's like, no one's getting captured today. But anyways, moving on from the massive rabbit hole we just went through right there. 360 Russian soldiers have been liquidated over the past 24 hours, along with 8 armored personnel carriers, 23 supply trucks, 15 tanks. Of course, 4 of those were had near Marinka, 40 artillery pieces, which is an amazing number, 20 drones, 3 MLRSs, and 5 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, a really good day. And hopefully we'll see that these losses continue in even higher and greater numbers in the days that follow. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from the casualty report and on into those frontline news clips. And we got none from the Northeast, by the way, just letting y'all know. So we're going to be moving on into the area of Cremena, where we got to see a BTR-4 treading water. And that thing do be treading. Check it out. All right. Bullshit! Man, whenever I hear someone lie to me, this is what I say. I say bullshit. But anyways, you see the
is that like a Chinese song or something?
No, I think it was actually Ukrainian.
Wow.
But when you see the BTR-4 getting in the water, look at that thing scooting, man. Looks like a little corgi trying to swim. Damn, dude, that thing's more so like driving under the water. And here it comes out the other side. And man, Look at that.
It's like a duck coming out of the water.
But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one near Cremena, where we got to see what happened to one of those BMP-3s after Baba Yaga hit it. So y'all saw Baba Yaga in action earlier. This is the after effects of what happens when Baba Yaga visits your part of the trench. They say that Baba Yaga dropped a RSHG. Yeah, right. One hell of an RSHG. That crater is where the BMP-3 was. The pieces are surrounding this area. Effed everything up. We see him showing some pieces of the BMP-3 that's left. Need to be careful. F's sake.
Effing Hurstel.
At least the new rollers remain. Hey, at least he's looking on the bright side, man. He sat there and looked around, and he saw just some loose road tires on the ground. He said, hey, at least the tires are still in good shape. This guy is one of those guys who thinks the glass is always half full. Respect. Holy F, it really blew up. Artillery exists, hopefully not this way. And there's a track right there that was on the BMP-3. We can see some more parts. Look where the belt ended up. We can also see just a casual road wheel just sitting up in the tree branches right there. This thing was torn up all over the trees. F. Man, he just keeps saying it. He's in shock. Could at least get the rollers for my vehicle. They see me rolling, they hating. But anyways, that's the end of that little clip. And as you can tell, Baba Yaga don't be playing. It literally just disassembles BMPs at this point. The explosives are that strong. But moving on from Baba Yaga's little ventures near Cremena today, we also got to see what Ukrainian counter battery looks like from the Russian side of things. Y'all ever wondered what happens when a Russian grad battery gets called in the open and the Ukrainian counter battery hits just right? I'll tell you what happens. It's absolutely bussin', for real, Matthew. It is straight up fire.
No cap.
Сваливаем нахуй. Отваливаем, хули сидим, блядь!
You see them trying to pack up the grad. The Ukrainian counter battery is coming down just a couple of dozen yards away. Cluster bombs are hitting out there.
Красиво, ярко, красочно, сука! Но мимо сосать хуй!
And this guy is having a straight up breakdown, man. And he's in there, I didn't get a return on my receipt. I have to go back. But anyways, I think, wait, hang on. Let's watch that clip again. I can't tell if there's a grad down there or not that just got hit. Let's see here. Can't tell.
Сваливаем нахуй.
Because I think, based off of all that black smoke that's coming up, I think that was a grad that just got hit dead on from the first shot from the Ukrainian counter battery on this unit, and that's why the guys started freaking out, because it just started hammering that part of the battery over there where the grad got hit, and his grad was still packing up and trying to leave, and they're just watching the other one burn in the distance.
Хули сидим, блядь!
We see the cluster bomb exploding over there. And okay,
man, that noise is intimidating. That cluster bomb sound.
It is. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like hundreds of balloons popping.
Yeah, it sounds like up there with the A-10, like Gal gun sound.
Yeah, it's a really weird sound, really ominous too. It sounds like a big machine gun or something. But that is certainly a grad that's been hit. Artillery explosions don't create thick black smoke like that on their own, and that appears to be a grad that may have been hit on its engine bay and a fire has started, but it hasn't really started to flare up strongly yet. It's just starting to smolder and heat up.
Красиво, ярко, красочно, сука! но мимо! Сосать хуй!
But you can't really tell for certain, so I can't say if a grad it was destroyed or not. It looks a lot like it, but still, that's what Ukrainian counter battery looks like for a Russian artillerist in an MLRS unit, just in case you all are ever curious. So moving on from that and down into the area of Bakhmut, we got 2 clips today, and also we got a little bit of frontline changes as well. Take a look at these. They're pretty nice. So let me hit that refresh. Refresh and inviting. But anyways, you can see that the Ukrainians have moved forward and are now on the railway berm and are in fact moving over it, which is a very promising sign because they'll probably start to make a little bit more ground once they secure the berm. But moving on to our northern flank clip, we got to see an FPV drone hitting some escaping Russians. Okay, nice heavy metal, but like, Zoink Scoob, I think he's targeting a minivan. He went for the Ural. And we see it go right in for the Ural. Oh my lord, I think that was an ammo Ural. It
was Bliat, but now it's no longer.
Hey, we hit the ammo. But anyways, that's the end of the clip. Very nice to see. Moving on to our second clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian soldier shooting down a drone with a stinger. And I gotta tell you, the Russians learned today, this thing stings. And there it goes.
Ебать! Лисий, ти її в'їбав, чи ні? Я не знаю. На, біжи, знімай. Воно продовжує.
Now see him going back out there for a look.
Я видео снимаю. Вон там. Есть, вражено, нахуй. Залупа, сука.
And you see the little smoke flare from where the drone was hit, showing it was a successful shot. Nice to see. I'll always love to see the stingers being used because it lets me know those things do sting. Moving out of the Bakhmut area and just kind of into the general Donetsk area, we also got to see a Dana SPG on the move. These are Czech SPGs provided by the Czech Republic. Huge shout out to them because I got a plug. Jan Lipovsky, who is the Czech foreign minister, actually follows this channel and actually has followed our Twitter as well, which is really cool to know that people in the Czech government are watching the channel. And of course, an amazing SPG that they've been able to provide to Ukraine. We have so far, from what I remember, not seen any of these lost from what I can think of right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it is an amazing SPG, one that's kind of Soviet origin, but has been upgraded a little bit more during the times of the Czech Republic, and absolutely wonderful to see that this thing is out there and in service with Ukrainian forces. Moving on from that and into our next clip near Konstantinivka and Staromonovka, we also got to see some pictures of some Ukrainian snipers out there doing some sniping stuff. Look at that ultra stealthy sniper. Look at this ultra stealthy sniper. And most importantly,
Very stealthy.
Look at these ultra stealthy snipers.
Man, Ukraine is kind of rough because the bushes like get up and move like this, and the bushes are also well armed with big calibers. Like the bushes are dangerous over there.
Man, in Vietnam, the trees spoke Vietnamese. In Ukraine, it's the bushes that speak Ukrainian. You just walk by the bushes, you hear, "Oh, hello," and you go, "Huh? What?" Dude, some Russian is going to go back home and go walking around the park, and there's going to be a little kid hiding in a bush, and the kid's going to go, "Hello," and then the guy's going to go, "Oh my god, don't kill me, man." He's gonna be like, "Don't hurt me, man, I give up." And
or even worse, they'll be like the other Russian and pull the pin on a grenade and throw it in the bush.
Slava Russia, and then throw it in there. Dude, that's gonna be bad news for that kid. But anyways, moving on from that, we're going to be bypassing the area where the Russians got ambushed today, because we already covered that earlier. If y'all want to see a ambushing, just go to the beginning of the stream. We covered that there. Moving on from that and into Volodymyrivka, we also got to see the 72nd Brigade of the Ukrainian Army hitting some Russian forces in this area. Check it out. Whoa, that sounded pretty cool. Oh, and they're firing their mortar, and the Ukrainians are about to fire them from their jobs, both figuratively and literally. I guess you could say that they were terminated from their positions. Oh, I cracked myself up. Anyways, moving on from that, great stuff from the 72nd, and on into our next clip near Novomayorsk. We also get to see an FPV drone getting a little hit. When you see it coming in. Whoa. Man, that thing ran right into the back of that van. that Scooby-Doo van, hit it, sparks went flying. Scooby and the gang will never solve the mystery. Oh, those damn kids. Anyways, that's the end of that clip. Beautiful to see. Moving on from that and on to our next one here in Zydabozhanya, we also got to see the Ukrainians fire an ATGM, specifically a Stugna, at the Russians in the open. Here it is. We can see the Stugna is already on its way. We can see the group of Russians in the crosshairs. We can see the group of Russians getting absolutely slammed in the crosshairs.
And oh my golly, it's a goal! Heavens, the whole squad is gone! Call it a squad wipe, an absolute sweep! This is incredible, absolutely fantastic.
But, of course, great to see the Ukrainians using the Stugna to great effect, and of course making sure that Russian forces will no longer be in that area of the line. Moving on from that and towards the area of Kinsky Rozdory, we also got to see the Ukrainians destroying a Mr. S, as opposed to Mr. B. We're going to be muting that. We can see them highlighting the Mr. S down there in the field. We can see the HIMARS setting up to do its thing. There it goes. And here it comes. Oh, we get a slow-mo replay of that. And then here it comes. Boom, chaka chaka blit. The Mr. S is gone. I like it.
Mr. B had to make a very tough phone call to Mr. S that night.
Man, Mr. S. Oh, sorry, Mr. B. Don't you be sorry, fool. But anyways, that's the end of that clip. Wonderful to see.
What's the charge? Mr. B.
You assured me I could speak. We haven't assured you anything, sir. Get in the car. You're under arrest. I'm under what? But anyways, moving on from that clip, I guess you could say that little Mr. S, Matthew, said, get your hands off my... Anyways, moving on from that, because I can't say the rest of that on stream, because it's no bueno. Moving on from that and towards Sherbaki, we got to see the 66th Brigade giving the Russians a little bit of that Sherbaki, you know what I mean? Here's the clip.
That sounded kind of weird, not gonna lie.
And really quickly, okay, here we go. Yeah, the work of the 66th Mechanized Brigade. Man, Sherbaki, more like Sussy Baka. But anyways, we can see the little tank moving around. We can see it has a cope cage, which clearly identifies this tank as a Russian one. And y'all know what happens to Russian tanks? Bad things. Like that. It just got hit. What are the Russians going to do? They're going to bring in another one. And what is it going to do? It's going to blow up and then act like it don't know nobody. But anyways, you can see the smoking tree line. We can see them looking back at the Russian tank, and then it got hit right on the mark.
Look at it creeping along like a sick dog.
That's an interesting... Oh,
dear. Now it's a dog on fire.
Man, that's pretty warm looking right there, man.
That's bad.
Oh,
look at that guy. Look at him.
My Lord.
He's crawling out of there.
Man, he made it out, man. He made it out. He's getting out of the hood of the tank with that one. I'll tell you that. But that's the end of that clip right there. Pretty wild to see the 66th Brigade take out 2 tanks in the area today. And now we know of, 6 confirmed tank losses that we were able to see on film today in just the clips near Marinka and also the ones near Sherbaki, Lobkove, and Pyatsky-Katsky. But moving on from that, it's now time for us to move on up to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 587 of the war. Can y'all believe that day 600 is only 13 days away? Like, really think about that.
That is crazy.
It is day 600.
Where's he at?
I have no idea. I think he's in the back rooms. But anyways.
Good Lord, man. It looks like he's in a nuclear silo or something.
Man, he's about to say, hello, everyone. I'm in the back rooms. It'd be scary back here. That's it.
He's about to say, you remember that big announcement from yesterday? Well, here it is. I'm in the nuke silo. We have nukes now.
That's it. He's about to say, you wouldn't believe it, you wouldn't guess it, but I am literally inside of the pizza hell right now. This is the work that the Russians have been putting into hell. It looks pretty crappy, I'm not gonna lie. Concrete just pouring out of the walls. Looks like it's covered in bird crap, but hey, not that bad. But anyways, here's the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Сьогодні у Харківській області. Куп'янський та Лиманський напрямки, потім місто Харків. Наші воїни, бойові бригади, командувач відвідав з командою розташування 103-ї окремої бригади ТРО, 68-ї окремої єгерської бригади імені Олекси Довбуша, 25-ї окремої повітряно-десантної Січеславської бригади, 15-го мобільного прикордонного загону «Сталевий кордон» мав Сьогодні можливість поспілкуватися з воїнами і також із інших наших бригад, як і завжди, спілкування з комбатами, конкретні потреби підрозділів і про зброю та забезпечення, і про комплектування бригад. Є речі, які мають бути зроблені, зокрема, щоб наші бригади мали більше мотивації, більше бойових можливостей. Мав честь також нагородити воїнів, які відзначились, особливо солдатів, сержантів, офіцерів, різні підрозділи, різний бойовий шлях, але однаково сильні українці. Пишаюся усіма. Надзвичайно приємно було нагородити наших бойових медиків. Дякую всім за захист України, за впевненість в Україні. Дякую за ваші шеврони та коїни. Буду берегти. Провів сьогодні окремі тривалі наради з усіма, хто відповідає за оборону та соціально-економічну ситуацію в Харкові. В Харкові, в області, багато питань, які важливі для регіону. Особливо перед зимою, особливо з огляду на постійний російський терор проти Харкова, проти області та намагання окупанта посилити штурми наших позицій. Заслухав доповідь генерала Сирського, також очільника обласної служби безпеки України, Національної поліції, ґрунтовні доповіді щодо захисту Харківського регіону. Обговорили з відповідними посадовцями, це і голова області, і голова міста, міністр енергетики, голова Укренерго, голова Нафтогазу і інші. Обговорили захист від російських обстрілів, енергозабезпечення міст і сіл Харківщини, захист енергооб'єктів, відновлення будинків, соціальної сфери, гуманітарне розмінування. Надзвичайно важливо, що Харків, попри все, не просто тримається, а допомагає тримати міцним увесь наш схід. Горде і світле місто, яке завжди буде містом сили для України і для всієї Європи. На нарадах були і доручення щодо підготовки до опалювального сезону, і щодо відбудови, і щодо фізичного захисту енергооб'єктів від російських ударів. Все треба виконати, по деяких речах значно прискоритись. Завтра я очікую детального звіту по проєктах відновлення від урядовців, окремі доручення військовим. І цими тижнями ми будемо дуже активно працювати з партнерами, аби зброї та снарядів, зокрема ППУ. ППУ – це головне. У наших воїнів повинно бути більше. І дякую всім, хто допомагає Україні. Слава усім, хто захищає нашу державу, державу і людей. Слава Україні!
And
Hiram Slava.
And I just want to also point out the one guy back there just chilling in the back rooms. He looks like he's actually kind of vibing in there. But anyways, that's the end of the speech. And of course, that is the end of the halftime show for this channel. We're about to be moving into part 2, which is where we get to talk to all of y'all for about the next 40 minutes or so. But before we do, I want to thank all of y'all for watching the channel so far, watching this news. If you have enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, because we make sure to run this channel, run this news 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night except for Monday. And not only that, if you show up on Sundays, we also run Sunday fundraisers as well. There's a lot to be around for, a lot to be here for. And so that begs the question, are you going to be a part of the Lee Spring Army? Let us know by clicking the subscribe button. Sick plug, right? Anyways, moving on from that, we have to get on into the poll. So, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so jumping into our final question and poll segment, we have one poll to address, and it says, the EU expects to announce Ukraine's accession to the EU by December of this year. And is it a big deal? 78% said yes, it would help Ukraine tremendously. 11% said no, it's a minor help and nothing big. And 10% said unsure. And I think that any alliance Ukraine can join at the moment will be a very big deal. Even if it is mainly just an economic alliance, Ukraine needs all the help it can get in every category, including military, economic, etc. And I think it is certainly a big deal. And good luck with that process, because I hear it is quite cumbersome. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it is very interesting here that the EU is going to be trying to get Ukraine in. I'd have to agree. Good luck. It's an incredibly difficult process. It has become an incredibly difficult process since what happened with Greece back in the actually, I think it was the early 2010s. I think it was like 2011 that the Greek economy collapsed, if I'm correct, Matthew.
I believe so. It feels like it was yesterday, but I think it was that long ago.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago, but it was also very long ago, if that makes sense. But when the Greek economy collapsed, they actually hurt the European Union so badly across the charts that they actually became very, 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 very selective about who they were letting in and who could even try and come in beyond that point. So there hasn't been a lot of new EU members since the Greek fiasco of the early 2010s. But it does appear that Ukraine is going to be one of them, and it seems as though the European Union is very apt to get them in. Of course, there's a lot to get out of the way. There's a lot that Ukraine has to do to even join the EU. It's really difficult to get in or even get out of the EU. It's a very, very difficult thing to be a part of as far as the bureaucracy goes. But it does have a lot of benefits, especially for its member states as far as the economics are concerned. It facilitates trade amongst the European countries, and it just speeds things up drastically. A good amount of the economic prosperity of Europe in this modern century can be largely attested to just from the connections that the European Union has provided for many of its member states. But still, hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to get in. It'll be very interesting to see them go through that process, and hopefully it goes well for them, because if it doesn't, I'll be sad. I would be sorely disappointed. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. With that being said, we are fresh out of polls, so we're moving into our super chat questions once again. And up first, we have a $50 donation from Jesus UCSB yet again. And thank you very much, Jesus, for the second support of the night. And he says, hola again. He says, one last smoke session. Since my fans love making memes of my pics, please show the pic I sent via XDM, or formerly known as Twitter. It's me in Vilsek, Germany as a tanker. Let them meme that. And he says, who wants smoke? Who wants smoke? And man,
my boy
is just going hard. I'm telling you.
My boy Jesus, he be throwing in that smoke. Man, he be. Let me see. Let me think. What the hell was that line, man? There was a meme out. I hate whenever I do that, man, because I have a joke lined up and then I forget it on the spot. But man, there was this one time I was watching this clip and this guy was in a video game and he went out to a hot dog stand. He was like, "Oh yeah, man, hi, let me get that. You think I'm here for a glizzy? I'm here for that smoke." And like he just started like socking this guy, but it was hilarious.
Oh, socking him.
Yeah, he started rocking this guy, but also
what the hell? Damn, man, that took a turn.
We have a picture of our boy Jesus
UCSB look at that.
In the army. Look at that. I think you can even see an Abrams back there. That looks like the motor pool way back there in the background.
That's pretty cool.
But
what was this picture taken, Jesus? This looks like maybe like the 2000s or something.
You know, it looks like the 90s a little bit, like with how like the camo looks. It looks very 90s-ish, but this could also be very early 2000s-ish too. So Jesus, when was this made? Because this is crazy. By the way, Jesus UCSB is the guy dead center of picture. But I gotta say, that is super cool, Jesus, and really cool to know that you are the LSA tanker. I gotta say, I love seeing pictures of what's happened in folks' lives, and this is honestly one of the coolest pictures that we've gotten. Well, actually, it's not the coolest. There's actually another one I'll tell you all about here. Sadly, I can't show it on stream because it's a Polaroid, but this is one of the coolest pictures that we've gotten. Another cool one, though, was actually taken by one of our viewers when he was a door gunner of a Huey in Vietnam. And he took a picture with his camera, and you could see the M60, you know, perched on its little mount on the side of the Huey. And you could see him looking out over the jungles of South Vietnam in the helicopter. It was sick. And it's the actual picture that he took, too, which is just incredible. Super cool. But I think that this is also an incredibly cool picture as well. I really love the camo that the U.S. Army had at the time. Honestly, I think this was peak camo perfection right here. I don't think we've actually gotten this good since. I think the BDUs were this pattern of BDUs was about the best that there ever was for the Army.
That's crazy. Jesus said this is 1998 when this photo was taken. It's weird how everything looks so different, like in photos from like the 90s and like the 2000s and stuff like that. It looks like it's a whole different era, like just from the like look of everything.
A whole new world. Yeah, it looks totally different. And what's crazy is that we probably could find this exact spot on Vilsek right now, and we could probably see what it looks like. And you know, I'm kind of interested. What does it look like? Let's go here to Vilsek, and let's find out. So, training fields are up here. Let's see. Y'all know I do pretty okay at geolocating, so let me see if I can geolocate this thing. We got some kind of a tower, some kind of a building here. It's a 1-story building, and what appears to be some kind of a 2-story hangar over here in the background, although I can't tell too well. So let's see here if we can find that.
He said motor pool.
Motor pool, motor pool, motor pool, motor pool. Hey, oh, I think we found it. I think we found it. This looks a lot like it. I'm not kidding. Because there's... Hang on, let me look at this. I mean, that could be it. I'm kind of doubting that right now, though.
He said Rose Barracks.
Rose Barracks. Let's see if we can find it. Rose Barracks. Let's see, maybe I need to go down here a little bit more. Vilsec Law Center. Ugh.
Hey!
Wait a minute, Rose Barracks,
Can I get in the building?
He said Rose Barracks?
Yes. That looks like the chapel.
Yeah, that looks like the chapel. Rose Barracks Education Center. So this is the area of Rose Barracks. So we're in the right place. Let's see here. Don't need to go down there. Vilsec Thrift Shop. Rose Barracks Theater. Okay. So it's got to be in this general semicircle area. Let's see. Left, he said. Left! So let's go left. So we're over here to the left now. We've got to be getting close now. We have to be getting close. Let's see here. Motor pool. He said motor pool again. Dagnabbit, I don't know where the motor pool is. Oh, wait a minute. I think we found it. This looks a lot like the motor pool. This looks a lot more like it. So we're getting closer now. We just have to find a tower-looking thing right there. I'm going to go with this being the general area because I feel like I'm going to get lost continuously trying to find this. But it is in this area somewhere up here at the very top of Vilsec. Or Langenbroek, as it's called right there. Still, thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is super cool to know that we have someone like you here who was a tanker in the U.S. Army and is also a proud member of this Lee Spring Army and helps to keep this channel running. And also, I think it's really cool that we have folks like you who watch this channel that have such cool backgrounds and history, such as being a tanker back in the late 90s for the U.S. Army. I think that's incredibly cool. We're highly honored to have you here. And honestly, I'd have to give you a quick little talk about how we deal with it. I wouldn't even worry, Jesus, about folks giving you smoke. I would not. Because people give folks smoke so wrong, especially from that one group, so wrongfully. It is completely uncalled for. They're very hypocritical. They're very vicious and mean people, and they act completely blown away when people say that about them. When people say they're vicious and mean, they go, "What do you mean?" And then they'll go like they did with you, and they'll find your whole family and try and harass all of them. And they've also done that to us as well. It's just largely kind of a part of dealing with those psychos. Really, that's the best way I can explain it. So I wouldn't even worry about the smoke. Their smoke's pointless and useless. And anyways, I hate to put it this way because it sounds like I'm putting them down, and we kind of are. You actually did something with your life. You actually have accomplished a lot. Most of them haven't really accomplished much of anything. That's why they're able to sit in a basement for 24 hours a day and figure out where everyone lives, is because they have nothing better to do. So I wouldn't even worry about the smoke they're giving, because their smoke is like a little cigarette. The smoke you're putting out, though, is like a freaking bonfire's worth of smoke or a Russian tank worth. And so thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus. I hope that consoles you in what you're going through, because I know it must be incredibly aggravating and annoying. But I got to thank you for being out there in the trenches and, you know, of course, standing up for us out there in this whole ordeal. And I wouldn't let it bother you too much. They're weirdos. They're crazy. That's the only way I can explain it. And one day, a lot of people are going to catch on to the kind of folks they are, because they are deplorable people. And so with that,
man, they need to go get lives. Like if they need Alcoholics Anonymous or something like that, they need to go to it and go get lives, because they seriously, if they can sit around and just like figure out where people live, stalk them, harass them, like individual viewers on a YouTube channel, you know your life's at a dead end if you're doing stuff like that.
Yeah, you know it. You really do. And they've done that to so many of our viewers as well, and also us, and apparently we were told that something else happened tonight, and we'll be looking into that and investigating that heavily. But the harassment doesn't end. I guess that's just a part of being on the internet now, and especially from these people. And I don't know what it is. They have some kind of a sickness. where they all have become obsessive stalkers. And it's not just of us, we're not complaining on our own part and what we see. There are so many of y'all, like you, Jesus, who come up to us and tell us they have found where I live and they're trying to find my family members as well to just harass y'all into submitting. And then what's even sick about it is that if y'all do submit, they don't even stop then. They just keep harassing you endlessly, trying to stalk you, find out information about you, try and ruin your lives over something that is stupid and pointless and usually flat out lies that they just come up with. But I still thank you for the support, Jesus. And we don't want to talk about it too much because it is what it is at this point and everyone's just kind of living with it. But thank you for being a part of the Lee Spring Army and thank you for being our commander of the LSA Tank Corps. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Jayburn, who puts in a $20 donation, and he says, it's my birthday, and thank you both for all you do, and Slav Ukraine. And also, happy birthday to you, Jayburn. I hope you've had a good one. And also, good news today coming out of Ukraine, so that should have been good as well, but happy birthday to you.
And happy birthday to you, Jay. I hope you've been having a good one. And really quickly, what the hell was that? YouTube Pro just popped up, Matthew, and just said, hey, you want to buy something? It's like, what the hell? I'm in the middle of running a show. Why are you asking me that? But still, thank you so much once again for being here with us tonight on your birthday, Jay. That is something. I hope you've been having a fun time watching tonight so far, and I hope you've been having an amazing birthday. It's crazy to think you've actually been around long enough on this channel that you probably had 2 birthdays here now, and I got to thank you so much once again for being with this channel for so long and supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running, even on your birthday. And that just blows us away. And I gotta thank you so much. And I hope this show tonight was as much of a gift as we could give, and hopefully it was funny. And hopefully it also got out all of the news that you were looking for, maybe even some extra bits as well that probably or maybe no one ever heard of. But with that, thank you so much once again, Jay. Happy birthday to you. And I hope that everyone in the live chat wishes Jayburn happy birthday as well. I'm sorry, actually correct. Yeah, it is Jayburn. I was like, wait a minute, is it JB or Jayburn? It's Jayburn. Everyone wish Jayburn a happy birthday in the live chat because he has been around forever. He's an old guard of this channel, and it's amazing to know that he's celebrating his birthday with all of us tonight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address it fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Marion, as always, for that very generous support. And she says, I am just lurking. Slav Ukraine. And did you get your paper in on time?
And thank you so much for the support, Marion. And also fun to hear you're lurking. We love it when people loik. And there's a lot of people that lurk around. Right now, there's 4,200 of y'all here right now. And we are only getting 25 chats a minute right now, and during the question segment, the chat slows down massively. So there are so many people who are still watching right now that are just lurking, and we don't know who they are or what they're doing, but still, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Marion, and supporting the channel and helping us keep it running. You help this channel to keep ad-free, sponsor-free. You help us to support our coffee and pizza fund. You help us to do everything behind the scenes that makes this thing possible. And I got to thank you so much once again. And I also got to say that, yes, I did turn in that paper on time. I turned it in at 5 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, and I am praying that it was a good paper. I cobbled it together over Saturday and Sunday. It was about 8 pages long, and I said that's good enough, and then I went and threw it in the bin. Well, not the trash bin. I went and threw it in the bin for the submissions, and hopefully it's a decent grade. But man, law school has been tough. And it's not tough because of like the assignments or anything. It's just tough because, gotta be honest, it's very boring. But anyways, with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And also thank you for liking. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And we've got a super chat from Olseron, who puts in a $20 donation. And I believe that is your first ever super chat of the channel. So big shout out to you. And also, thank you for supporting the operation and helping to keep us delivering the news. And he said, Zoink Scoob, Zoink Scoob, they're speaking German. Raggy, guten Tag.
Like, Zoink Scoob, they're speaking German. Rut Raggy. Schlägt mal like wenn ihr gegen Deutschen wollt. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Olseron, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope you enjoyed that fairly well. I hope you found it funny. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. Folks like you who support this channel help us to keep this thing going. You really do. we don't run this channel any other way than through viewer support. And so every single one of y'all that decides out of y'all's generosity to support this channel helps us to do this as a full-time job, day in and day out, every single week nearly. And I gotta thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Osaron, who just threw in an incredible amount of support, and also asked us for a little joke that I love to do, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing going. And so, with that being said, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ed, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Ed, as well for that support.
Hey!
He says, Irish Ed from HBGPA here. Great quotes. My favorite founding father, Dr. Franklin. Only father, sense of humor. Then Mr. Axel Rose. If you got the money, budget, Russia, we got your disease. We're going to watch you bleed.
Interesting. I don't know what
that's a quote from a song.
Man, that's a quote from a whole song. And I gotta
but
say,
they didn't say Russia.
man, I gotta say, man, I don't, what happened? Well, I bet you can't even do a push-up, fatty. You lying two-faced pony soda bacille. Thank you so much for the support, Ed, and helping the channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, Dr. Franklin was one hell of a founding father. An interesting fact, Matthew, that you may not know is that did you know that he had tons of honeys while he was in France?
And by honeys, you mean what now?
Man, by honeys, I mean his side pieces.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Man, you went, oh. but man, Benjamin Franklin went on a diplomatic envoy to France for the United States throughout most of the Revolutionary War, actually. And while he was there, he was a player. They actually wrote about him in France. French people did, and they were like, this guy is like the life of the party and an absolute player. It was. That
dude's practicing diplomacy and preserving democracy all at the same time.
Man, he's practicing diplomacy in the streets, and he's practicing diplomacy in the sheets. I mean, the guy guy was next level, man, just next level. But anyways, I'm just saying that jokingly, you know. But anyways, pretty interesting little side thing about Benjamin Franklin. He was also pretty funny as well, from what they say. And with that, I hope that does address that part of the super chat fairly well. And I don't know about the song quote, but an interesting quote. I'll have to try and pull up that guy and try and listen to the song and make sense of that later, because for some reason it's not clicking for me right now. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping the channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Mace, LSA. And thank you, Mace, very much for that support. And also, it's good to see you once again.
Hey!
He says, I'm in a good mood today. And also, I'm glad to hear you're in a good mood today. He says, for certain reasons, here, have some money, you know? Pizza, coffee, some pew-pew. Do it up. Slava Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support, Mace of the LSA, an absolute stoic Chad. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, great to hear you're in a good mood today. We are also in a good mood today. We are hyped up on caffeine. It was a good day. It was a pretty good day. Well, you know, except for school. But anyways, we will make sure to take your support and support ourselves with it. It's an evil thing we do to support ourselves and do this as a job, but thanks to you and your evil act of supporting this channel, we are able to keep this thing running. And so thank you so much once again. And I think I will use it to get some pew-pews, because I actually ended up getting a small amount of really cool pew-pews today. I was dropping by a place and they said, oh, hold up, we got something pretty cool. And I said, oh, what do it be? And they pulled out green-tipped 5.56. Armor piercing 5.56. And I was like, oh, no way. And they were like, oh, yeah, way. And I was like, how much of it do you have? They were like, we've got 800 rounds. And I was like, I'll take 80. So I have 80 of them now. And they actually were pretty cheap. I think they were like 80 cents a round, which I think for armor piercing is actually fairly decent, because I think normal 5.06 is like right now 45 cents a round, 40 cents a round. So it wasn't that bad. I was like, hey, I'm pretty happy with that. It's pretty spicy stuff, pretty cool. So I was like, why not? So actually did get some pew-pews today, and hopefully one day I'll get to try them out, because I hear that they go through everything. And maybe we'll make a video on that and show what the little green-tipped rounds can do. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Mace of the LSA, and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to do it up. And Slava Ukraini, Rom Slava. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Rob Eisman, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Rob, for that support. And he does lay down some knowledge about that sub. He says sub 0930909, hypoxia not location specific on sub. Operating reactor would have scrubbed CO2. Drones with dosimeters flying over sub area, loss measuring radiation, and sub still trapped, loaded with nukes, all crew dead. Stupid China. I like how that summed it right up at the end, like stupid China.
Man, Rob Eisman sat there. So basically, then went on for 3 hours about the Chinese economy, the Chinese military, and everything else. And then at the end, so China's stupid. It's like, it's like, yes, I agree with that completely. My little brain can understand that statement perfectly. But still, interesting here, and I gotta thank you for sharing that with us, Rob, because from what I had heard, they said that it was somehow able to return to port after 6 hours of emergency repairs at sea, well, underwater, and then it was able to push onwards towards its home port inside of the Yellow Sea somewhere. I didn't get an exact location of that, though. So thank you for sharing that. From what Rob is actually saying, y'all, based off of his information, the sub may still be lost out there in the Yellow Sea, and they may be trying to conduct some kind of recovery efforts or largely cover it up, so that way people don't know that the Chinese just lost a Type 96 sub. And hopefully I'm getting that right with the Type 96 thing. And also, Matthew, I'm not even going to say their name. I'm going to say Hugh. Don't say the other part, Matthew, because you're going to get had. They said green tip is not armor piercing, and I swear it is. 556 green tip. Let's see. It was renamed. Let's see here. This was not in the home troops. Let's see here. Green tip. So, M855 556 NATO ammo, also known as light armor piercing or LAP ammo, is legal to purchase. And that is the ammo I got. It's M855 green tipped light armor piercing round. So it is let's see. Let me check this out. Someone's got a whole reloading thing on it, so let me see. Let's see. Purchase stands for munitions. Also would, let's see. One second, I'm trying to read this because I'm trying to see, because I've heard it's always green tipped armor piercing ammo.
Barry Woodward said green tip equal eco-friendly. Man, they've gone all green on us with the ammo, making it all like, you know, good for the polar bears and all that good stuff.
So it is armor piercing. The ATF actually attempted to ban M855 rounds from being publicly owned in 2015, claiming that they were armor piercing rounds, but that did not pass. So M855 is still possible to be owned by the public. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation, and he says, toxic gas, I've been there. Taco Bell never again. Oh dear. Oh my.
What are you arresting me for? Eating a meal? A horrid Taco Bell meal? But still, thank you so much.
Man, have you tried that crunch wrap thing? Man, that tastes just like the other stuff they got there. It's all like different shapes, but the same taste and everything.
Yeah, it is, really. They have like the same 4 basic ingredients and they just rearrange them, and that's it. Same flavor.
Shall you like this flavor in a taco shell or a burrito?
Would you like it flat, burrito, or taco shell? It's like those are your 3 options. Oh, I like it arranged in the taco shell variety, please. That really suits my fancy, my palate. But I gotta say, thank you for the support, Psyops, and helping the channel to keep on running. And I would have to say, I've also been there with Taco Bell. Toxic gas is just a thing that comes with the territory of a Taco Bell meal. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Psyops. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one also goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation once again. And he says, we don't need no Russian petrol. Hey, leader, leave that fuel alone. Set to the Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd.
I don't even know what the Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd is, man. That sounds like some kind of a bricklayer. But still, thank you for the support, Psyops. And I'd have to say, hey, we don't need that petrol. And I think it's kind of proven it recently. We actually don't need it at all. Gas prices in the United States have been fluctuating completely independent of Russian oils or gases, for that matter. Europe's a little bit of a different story, but in the United States, it's had absolutely no effect on us. So with that, I thank you for the support. I thank you for another little funny gap on the tune of Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again.
And up next, big shout out to Ian with a very interesting last name there. And thank you very much, Ian, for that $10 support without a comment. And we also have a $5 super chat from Samuel Newton. And thank you very much, Samuel, as well, for that support without a comment. And big shout out to both of you for helping to keep the channel running. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Anime Z, who says, "Keep up the good work."
Hey, and thank you so much to all of y'all for the support. And thank you for saying to keep up the good work. Your support helps us to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so thank you so much for supporting us so that way we can keep up this good work. Because once again, without folks like y'all who continuously support the channel and go out of y'all's way and of course be incredibly generous and support us to help us to do this as a job, we wouldn't be able to keep up the good work. And so with that, thank you once again. And with that being said, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Siri, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "We appreciate your hard work and force of brothers, and war can bring about some wild and motley crews. And with that in mind, a proposal for a new division of the LSA, the Vidmas, witches in Ukrainian."
Man, we got some witches, but still, thank you so much once again, Siri, for the support. And thank you so much for appreciating our hard work. We put in a lot. Actually, to be honest with y'all, we put in so much. We're having like crisis struggles in the background right now. Not going into great detail about it, but we have so much on our plates. It's honestly kind of overloading right now, being entirely honest. But beyond that, thank you for enjoying the hard work, because we really do put in a lot of effort in trying to make sure that this is something enjoyable for everyone every night. And let's see here. With that in mind, proposal for a new division. I think a proposal for a new division would be a pretty interesting idea. The Vidmas. Why not? I'd say, you know what? It gets my stamp of approval. Vidmas, now a thing. If you want to be a part of the Vidmas, you can be. And so with that, thank you so much for support, Siri. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation once more. And thank you very much, Psyops, for the third support of the night. He says, "Now for a famous riddle. The most famous riddle in history. Why did the chicken cross Ukraine?" Because he F around and find out. Ukraine is a country you don't cross. And also, Putler is short for poultry.
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Sibes, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I like that joke. It's a good one. But you know something? I've got a good one for you, Psyops. Why in the world did the husband abandon his wife and never return?
Why?
Because she was effing Hurstel. Ah! Oh man,
dang man,
man. Oh man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. But still, thank you for the support once again, Sibes. I hope that does address that fairly well, and I hope you enjoyed my joke in return. A joke for a joke. It sounds fair to me, but still, thank you once again. And also, that's interesting here. The Putler is short for poultry. Maybe that's why Prigozhin had a lot to do with him. He was hoping to get some of that chicken. But with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, big shout out to Mark Gagne for putting in a 5 Canadian and putting in a picture of the YouTube lemon creature with a small fella with him playing the trumpet, and also the other fella playing a kazoo or maybe a trumpet too. I can't tell.
Man,
but thank you very much for the support.
Man, they
be tooting.
They be tooting them horns, and that awkward silence was awkward as hell. Like I was like, they be tooting, and it just went quiet. I was like, oh. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sibes yet again. He says, "There's a steam-powered sub. The British made it in World War II, as bad as it sounds."
What? Oh, hang on, I've never heard of that. Steam-powered submarine. British K-class submarine. Huh. This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Oi, Governor!
That is something else right there. It looks like a ship.
You know what this thing looks like on the front? It looks like they were going to build a ship, like an actual destroyer or something, and then halfway through building it, they went, no, it's a sub now. And then they went, oh, and then they just went and started building a sub. This is ugly. Oh. This is bad. This is terrible. How many of them were made? Oh my lord, 17 of these things were made? Ew. Ew! That is terrible! Oh my heavens! Oh, good heavens! This is awful. I'm telling y'all, I've never seen anything this bad before. I didn't even know about this thing, and I wish I hadn't. But thank you for the support, Sibes, and sharing that with us, because now I regret seeing it. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 as well and says, I came up with a new board game. I pictured it being used with a board from the Battleship game, but I'll send Matt the details if you want to read it.
Oh yeah, I would love to read it. And so send them over the details. Send them, baby. And I'll make sure to read them and take a good look at it. But with that, thank you for the support. Pretty interesting idea. And I've always had ideas for video games. Problem is, though, is that video games are so expensive to produce, it would probably never be possible. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Captain Flack, who says, apparently the warehouse fire in Rostov-on-Don started when the Russian uniform pants spontaneously combusted. And I did hear about that, and we did get to see it. An unfortunate fire in Rostov-on-Don. I wonder who started that. Surely not a Russian who was disgruntled or anything like that, or maybe a former employee who didn't like making pants for the killers. But Enforcer, what say you?
Whatever happened, Matthew, they're certainly losing their shirts over this one.
They are losing their shirts, man. They didn't even have them to begin with. How can they lose them?
Oh man, that's a good one. I gotta admit, man, that was a good one. But still, I did see that, and I thank you so much for support. We did see that, but we had so much news to cover tonight. It sadly didn't make it into the news cycle. We actually we have got so much news every single night that it takes us like an hour and 40 minutes to cover all of it. So we then have to go through and kind of pick and choose what was important enough to make it and what was not important enough to make it. And that was one of the ones that got axed before the show tonight. But still, thank you for the support. I did see it, and I love to see that they lost their shirts and their pants. I guess you could say their liar pants on fire too. But with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hank R., who puts in a 5 and says, not even a coffee, but I'm hoping 200 other folks will follow me. And believe it or not, Hank, that is a coffee because I drink Keurig, or however you say it.
Keurig.
And I think there's about $1 a coffee, so not too bad. I think the Enforcer has a little bit more expensive coffee that he drinks, but for me, I'm a simple folk. I like to go and get a little bit of that Pike Place in the brewery, and that's good for me. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support. I gotta thank you for helping us to get a cup of coffee. I love myself a cup of coffee. I drink it all the time, and it gets me all hyped up for the show. But still, thank you so much. It is a cup. It's a cup because I think mine is like $3.60 a bottle, so it probably comes out to like 60 cents a cup. So thank you so much once again because I will be able to drink coffee with your support. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we're moving into our live chat questions. We are fresh out of super chats, and once again, Charles Becker. Excuse me. But once again, big thanks to all of our super chat donors tonight for helping to keep the channel running as always, and we do appreciate that support very much. And you keep us on the air like PBS. So thank you very much. And moving on to our live chat questions, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream up first. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, and Tightlines LSO, and also Kevin J. They said, hi, LSAers. Tonight's Morse code cipher is, give me that beep beep, that boop boop, and that bop bop, LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. I'm running out of Morse code messages now. It's the 587th day of the war. I've been doing this for 500 days. But leave me alone. But y'all did get it right. I got to say, huge credit to y'all. But I really am running out of ideas for Morse code messages. But still, with that, thank y'all for deciphering it again tonight. And with that, due to time constraints and also due to us trying to get enough sleep to be able to survive, we will be answering only 4 live chat questions, and then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And did y'all know, like y'all should know this, like y'all would need to know this, but I actually have a midterm tomorrow, believe it or not. That's crazy. But I'm ready for it. I'm ready. I'm telling you. Oh man, I'm always ready. But anyways, moving on from that. We have our first live chat question from John Underwood, who says, how far is the Ukrainian army from Donetsk City?
How far is the Ukrainian army from Donetsk City? They're actually on the outskirts of Donetsk, near Avdiivka. That's actually the direct outskirts of the city. Because when you go in here, there's Avdiivka. Here's the highway right outside of Avdiivka and Donetsk, and then right across from that, it starts to be Donetsk City. So they are just literally right across the highway from Donetsk right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well because they're very close. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to 40K, who says, have you heard about the National Emergency Alert Test? And supposedly Russia is having the same test on the same day. which is tomorrow. And isn't that coincidental they're doing that? That's kind of a little bit fishy, isn't it? But yeah, all of our phones will be buzzing tomorrow. I don't know what time it is. I'm sure some folks didn't get the memo, so they're probably going to be freaking out and going berserk. And everybody else will have to tell them, hey, sit down, man. Just chill out. It's just a test. And then they're going to be like, what? No, it's real. It's real. And they're going to be running around crazy. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, I can't wait to be at law school tomorrow in the middle of all that. That's going to be fun. It's going to be nice. It's going to be enjoyable. People are going to be going, I wasted my life for nothing. I did all this for the world to end. But anyways,
man, if the midterm goes bad that I'm taking tomorrow and that thing goes off, that'll be my way out. Just get up and be like, oh, we're getting nuked. Oh my God, stop the test. Stop the test.
Dude, no, man.
That's like stall tactic.
You just hear, and you go, you turn into an air raid siren in the middle of the class. Like, that would be funny. That would be
I just
hilarious.
get up and run out the whole building and get in my car and go home.
Do you sit there? Oh my god! I still got time. I still got time to say goodbye to my family. And then you get up and go just running out. And they'd probably be like, oh man, that would be great. I think that'd be hilarious. You should do that tomorrow. You really should.
Oh yeah, I should totally do that.
Yeah, because it's only a participation grade. It's not like they can actually get you for anything.
Yeah.
Oh. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, this one goes to Mick, who says, Enforcer, has the Abrams made it to the front?
They haven't made it to the front. They made it into Ukraine, but they haven't made it into the front yet. They're currently somewhere in a Western training field, and they're probably going to be moving towards the eastern side of Ukraine, probably within the next 2 weeks, I would assume. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
This is actually the last one of the night, so would you like to do the whole spill?
No way, man. For real, for real?
This is the last one.
Man, I guess we're on to the final one then. And so, who is the lucky last person to win the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to TS. He says, did that one Chechen, that guy called Kadyrov, did he die?
No, he didn't. It was close. It was very close. It was neck and neck. But he pulled through, and now he's just kind of hanging out, chilling, and doing his thing. So, sadly, no. But we're hoping one day he'll get it. like that inspirational quote, Matthew, that was put up in our school. You have to be lucky every time. We only have to be lucky once. And then you wouldn't believe who said that was the IRA. So it's like, inspirational quote, not that much. Come out, you black and tans, come out and fight me like a man. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And also hopefully throw in one last joke for the night. But with that, it is now time for us to end tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching tonight. It's been an absolute honor to be able to run a stream for 6,000 of y'all live and 24,000 of y'all before the stream ended. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We run this stream 6 days a week. Every single day of the week except for Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine in picture and video evidence. And when we take off Mondays, like tonight, we also cover yesterday's news as well. So technically, it is 7-day continuous coverage on this channel of every single day and waking moment of this war. And so, with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraini!
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you all for another great stream. And of course, as always, Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards